Win up to £25,000. The Community Lottery, a subscription-based lottery that allows you to continue to support good causes that matter. When you win, good causes win. Every month, eligible good causes have the opportunity to win a share of funds that could help them continue the good work that they do in our communities. To apply, there's no complicated forms, nor do you have to be a registered charity. Just grab your phone, send us a 60-second video explaining your good cause and the difference having extra funding would make to your project. Visit thecommunitylottery.com. Hit the play button and sign up for either 13 weekly draws or by direct debit for just £4.35 that gives you 4 weekly draws. You could have the chance of winning £25,000. The aim of the Community Lottery is to create an additional source of funding that will enable good causes to undertake innovative projects that matter. If you're in, the communities win.
Hello, and welcome to another edition right here with What a Week with myself, Mr. C Comedian, and of course, my co-host, the Batman to the Robin, the wonderful Mr. Tony Crossbody.
Good evening, Mr. C. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Denise.
Big up.
Good evening, Alison.
Big up to everybody who's watching far and near. We welcome you to What a Week right here on Media Net TV Live, Media Net Live TV, in fact. Well, what a week have we got for you, ladies and gentlemen. Tony, how has your week been thus far now that we've entered into...
Oh, man. Tears for fears, you know, more fear, more lockdown. And the thing about it is, it really sounds like this is going to be the norm now at least until April.
Come on. It's like, I don't even know what to say, man. I think black people have had enough of it. So we're not even calling it tier 4 now. We're just calling it ball until 2021. Everything is lock off, bro.
But you know what? You're not going to stop black people from having their Christmas.
Well, listen, definitely. Carolyn says, good evening, C. Good evening, Tony. Greetings from Jamdown.
That's the best thing anybody could do right now. At least if you're locked down, you're locked down in the sun.
There we go. Good evening, Hadriana, as well.
Because
Karen James, good evening. And also Denise Richards, good evening as well. Good evening to each and every single one of you. So Tony, tier 4, man, has it spoiled the Christmas celebrations for yourself? The festive season celebrations for yourself?
Well, not personally. I mean, I'm not really much of a one for the Christmas, you know, but I would take the time out to go and visit family and look for them. You know, it's that one time of the year where, you know, we're so busy we don't see a lot of our family, and then the one time in the year when everybody's off, when you can go, now the government's telling you, well, you can't. And I think for a lot of people, it's really going to be a struggle, because if your mother doesn't live with you and your father doesn't live with you, I mean, you're not going to lead them on their own over the Christmas, are you?
No, definitely not. And I think it's a very good point that you've made there, Tony, because a lot of people have been denied access to their family, especially the elderly, throughout the whole of this whole coronavirus, COVID-19 madness. And it almost seems like that Christmas has been promised to us all along. It's almost like, oh, well, you know what? If you behave, if you do this, you know, we look forward to. So a lot of people have been looking forward to this moment. A lot of people thought that, you know, at least would get a few days grace over the Christmas period, because, you know, we've had 3 days graces throughout this whole lockdown period. So why not more? You know, why not now in this special time where families are used to getting together? It just seems like everything's gone absolutely pear-shaped, man.
And it's so lastminute.com as well, wasn't it? I mean, it was only a couple of days ago. All of a sudden, overnight, this virus seems to have mutated. And, you know, next day there's an announcement saying, oh, by the way, Christmas is cancelled. It's just the way it's been done. And apparently, allegedly, the government knew about this.
Wow.
At least a week before they had the information available, but they held off. And so, you know, this gets to feel like a carrot and stick situation.
Yes.
You treat a child, oh, well, look, if you do good at school, mommy's going to get you a gift, right? It's just, you know, so, you know, if we observe all these lockdowns, all this inconvenience, if the old people die and all that, then we'll have a vaccination and then we'll all come out this much better.
And to me, the funny thing is, I mean, have you heard of tier 4 before that they made the announcement on the actual day? I didn't even know tier 4 existed.
Nah, that is just another word for the lockdown that we had. What was it, back in March, April?
Right,
except now this one's actually going to be extended, because what they're saying now is, well, you know, we need to keep this going until the vaccines become readily available.
The thing what I find really strange and interesting though, Tony, is that, you know, if you look at the charts or the graphs of influenza flu over the last 5 years, you'll see that the flu, as we already know, is seasonal. It has its highs and lows throughout the year. And, you know, especially this time of year, it always increases. So it's just common sense that the numbers for this particular thing would go up, because the numbers for flu go up this time of the year anyway. And again, it's even, you know, let's apply common sense to this. What do people tend to do most over Christmas and the New Year period? Do most of?
Well, eating and drinking. They're inside, aren't they?
Eating and drinking to excess, to the point where we drink and eat more at any other given time of the year. Therefore, our bodies are full of toxins. Our immune system is compromised. Therefore, we get sick, we get ill. It's just common sense. It's got, you know, this thing that it's mutated. How comes this COVID-19 virus, which is the same all over the world, has only mutated in the UK?
Karen James, I agree with you. Yes, tier 4 is really locked down. It's just locked down by another name. Yeah. And Mr. C, that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, the thing about it, they're going to use the figures. I mean, apparently, I believe in this country, 100,000 people die every year during flu season. Right? That's
roughly.
Yeah, that's not something that's reported. It's just taken as a standard, right? watch what happens now when we get around to March, April. They'll give you the figures for the amount of deaths that have taken place during this winter season, plus, of course, the effects of lockdown, the depression that brings, and the suicide that brings.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really coming to the point now where a lot of people are going to be really low. Again, you know, you've taken that little Christmas spirit out of people. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty going into 2021. I think a lot of people's mental health will be challenged. Definitely. Jackie Pearson says, forget Christopher Columbus being a damn blasted liar. Now we have Boris. And Tegan Allison says, I wonder if they're still producing the flu stats, as that used to be quite common, but not heard it mentioned once. Very, you've got to do your own research.
Yeah, Alison, they are. They're just not talking about it, and they won't talk about it now because everything now has to be COVID related.
Definitely. Denise Francis says, they're messing with our minds. Most definitely. So look, we have to ask the question to our viewers, Tony, and I'll even put it to yourself as well. So look, we're in tier 4. Everything is locked down, lock off. Are you still going to take the chance to go and visit your loved ones? Are you going to say, Boris, bouncing balloons to you? Because I know this is a family show and we have children watching. So bouncing balloons to you, Boris. I'm going to go and see my mum. I'm going to see my nan. I'm going to go and see my loved ones. I'm going to go and have a festive meal with my partner's parents, who we haven't seen for the last 2 to 3 months. Are our viewers going to take the chance and go and see some of their loved ones, or are you going to spend Christmas on your ones or in your own homes? What say you, Tony? I have to ask you the question. Are you going to venture out?
I recommend that everyone follows the government guidelines as best as possible.
Well, very well said. You're a true diplomat, Tony. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because Priti Patel has made a statement. If we show this headline, please. Priti Patel.
What is
Gorgeous Patel. Gorgeous Patel has come up with this. She's saying she urges people to call on the police if their neighbors break Christmas rules. That's an unpretty thing you're doing there.
Not pretty, very ugly.
Very ugly indeed. Oh my days. She's gone as far as to say that she herself would actually call the cops on her own neighbors. She said she would not spend the holiday season with her family in other parts of the UK, and that she said she would spy on her neighbors and inform on them if they broke the rules. Wow.
Yeah, I mean she's gonna say that, but I mean that's generally not been the case with politicians throughout this lockdown. They've all been busting the rules, haven't they?
Exactly, Tony. You know, a great point that you make, because what happened with Hancock?
Exactly. He had a problem with his eyes, didn't he? He had to drive by the sea to make sure he could see. Right? Other politicians in Scotland going to their holiday homes with their whole posse of family. During lockdown when they weren't supposed to be going nowhere. So, you know, Priti talks a good talk.
Yeah. I mean, she says any individual that saw another person breaking the laws should really take it upon themselves. She said if she saw somebody flouting the coronavirus regulations, she would inform the police. And she's also saying that she doesn't believe that the police are going to be very relaxed about enforcing coronavirus laws. I mean, me personally, I haven't seen any police enforcing any coronavirus laws within my area. I don't know. Have yourself seen anything, Tony, or any of our viewers?
I'll tell you what I have seen. I mean, I've seen a couple of incidences where police have been heavy-handed in supermarkets.
Right. Okay.
Called the police for customers not wearing masks. So I wonder whether or not police have been sort of given the mandate. Listen, you got to go rough and tough on them over the holidays. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Caroline says, if I was home, yes, this has not prevented me from seeing those I wanted to who refute this crap. Henny HQ says, please say they will give warnings, not fines. So watch this space. Well done to the police. A certain person, I don't want to name them because again, this is being recorded, said that they're going to their parents for Xmas, so they don't business. And also, I think Denise Francis was saying, I think that they're just looking to find people to make money off us. Very well. Yeah, very true.
Hello, honey. Hello, Karen James. Hey, Joanna. Good evening. Jackie Pearson. Hello.
So Pretty Patel, she's saying that she's urging people not to travel. She's saying, why would you travel? If you're in a low tier area, why would you travel into a high tier area? Does that make common sense? If you're in a safer zone, why would you travel into a zone which has got more risk? Why would you do that?
No. Did you see though that last week when the announcement was made, everybody sort of rushed to the train station to try and get out of London, and the train stations were packed.
Absolutely. King's Cross.
I think it was Hancock that came on. They were like, it was very disgraceful to see all the people gathered together to get out of town. Yeah. But what did you expect?
Of course, because people want to see their loved ones. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what to say. We'll definitely have to keep a watch on this, because I'm sure over the next week or so there will be headline news as regards to people either flouting the laws or people taking the law into their own hand. Watch and see. But we'll be covering it. I don't
want to be funny here, right? But I think this is something that black people are going to totally ignore. If they see their neighbor having friends around, I think for the most part they're just going to, do you know what I mean? They're going to ignore it.
Make the party continue.
Right. Just invite me next time. You know what I mean? But I think other groups of people are more likely to take this very, very seriously. And if you have people coming to your door, you're likely to be snitched on, I think. I think the government's creating this sort of sheepdog society where, those who believe that this is absolutely real and serious will be informers to the police, and basically, we'll have these situations where premises are being raided or, at least visited by the boys in blue. But I think a lot of people who are just like, I'm not entirely convinced that this is as bad as they said. They're just going to allow it. They're just going to say, well, you know what, have a good time.
Definitely. I just want to say thank you to, was it Karen James who corrected me? Yes, it was actually Dominic Cummings, not Hancock. Thank you very much for that, Karen. Sorry, you can always count on our viewers to set the record straight, man. Love them. Sean Adela says, good evening, guys. Pretty Patel might eat her own words because the police will be busy with the MPs who are amongst the biggest rule breakers.
Absolutely. Good evening, Sean.
Oh, dear.
Good evening, Jonathan.
Yep. Charmaine Bradshaw also says, my peeps are in tier 3, so me driving up there with London address number plates leaves me wide open for the police to stop me knowing my luck. Of course, your number plates do reveal, but do they though? Your number plates, not your number plates. It's actually because they can tell from the APNR exactly where you live as the owner of the vehicle, not your number plates, but who actually drives the vehicle and the address. So that comes up automatically on the police dashboard. So so they'll know whether you're out of town or out of your area. The point is that your plate could be anywhere in the country. What specifically is going to make the police target you to find out where your plates are from, other than your black ones, but. Generally speaking, unless you drive suspiciously, they're not going to need to look you up. No, but even still, they'll probably just be doing that now. They'll just be doing that routinely to see, are you in your own vicinity? You see, so and then stop you and ask you, is which party I got? If your car is registered to a London address and you're going Birmingham or Leeds, then which party I got?
Right. And I can guarantee you somewhere, somebody is going to be having a rave. No doubt.
I hope I get the invite. I hope I get the invite, mate. Really and
brother,
truly.
There's some people in this country that's so hardcore. They don't business about no announcement.
Yeah.
They don't fear no reprisal.
And I think one of those people might be Janice Bell. She says, I have absolutely no interest in any of this scaremongering by the government. Life for me goes on as normal as God intended it to. There you go. Right. It's a God-given right. Your God-given right. So listen, we shall watch and see what happens with this. Ladies and gentlemen, our next news item that we're covering right here on What's a Week is to do with sport. And of course, this week we had the BBC Sports Personality of the Year 2020, amongst which we had boxer Tyson Fury, England cricketer Stuart Broad, and snooker great Ronnie O'Sullivan were also shortlisted for the main award. However, for we as a people knew that really and truly there was only one person who could win this award, and we was very happy to see the winner was, Tony?
Lewis Hamilton!
Absolutely phenomenal, as one of my associates and good friends would say. So this is the second time Lewis Hamilton has actually won this award. I do believe he won it first in 2014, runner-up in 2019. However, what he has achieved this year has been absolutely remarkable. Tony, I know that you're an avid Formula One viewer and fan of Lewis Hamilton. Do you think that this is fitting for him after all what he's achieved this season?
Oh, it's absolutely amazing, isn't it? You know, I just find it incredible that somebody can be so young and be legendary. You know, at a young age. You know, a lot of time we speak about legends long after their careers have passed and their achievements. And this man here is just going from strength to strength, and he's still got so many years ahead of him.
Oh, definitely so. And even if they try and you know, give him a little COVID positive test to try and slow him down, he still ends up a winner. You know, Lewis said he wanted to congratulate all of the incredible nominees. He's so proud of what they have achieved, and he wants to say thank you to everyone that had voted for him. So he also continued to say a Merry Christmas to everyone, and it's been such an unusual year. He wants to mention, of course, look, he's so humble. He wanted to mention as regards to the hard work of the frontline workers and all the children around the world. And to me, that spoke volumes of who he is as a person and how he's been raised by his parents. You know. Yeah,
and obviously his support, you know, for Black people's rights. I think that you know, he sort of rubbed a lot of the public up the wrong way, who I think misunderstand, you know, what it is that he's sort of campaigning for. But nevertheless, you know, a total legend. And the thing is, he's going to surpass and break all records because, as I mentioned, with the time that he has ahead of him, and he's still driving at such a high level. I mean, he's unstoppable right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Janice says, Lewis Grenadian Hamilton. Well done, my homeboy. Oh, he's a spicy, is he?
Green.
He drives like a Jamaican, though. He drives like a Jamaican. I've seen where he lean to one side, you know, move over, bad man, I come true. But again, you know, despite his wealth, he seems grounded, and most importantly, he still has a connection with his community, who may not be faring as well as him. He said he wanted to say to try and stay positive through this difficult time, and he's sending you all positivity. And he's once again, he says thank you from the bottom of my heart. That's just showing you how humble and what a great guy he is. So Lewis Hamilton, man. Yeah,
brother, salute. That is a real, you know, an accomplishment. Twice, two sports personalities.
Yeah. Incredible. Also, I'd like to mention Marcus Rashford, who also won a special award for all of his hard work, what he's doing with young people. and children being fed who just haven't got the means to be fed. So again, big shout out to Marcus Rashford as well.
Who presented that award? Was that Boris? Did Boris present that award?
I don't think Marcus wanted it from I've no idea. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
And to present this award, we have the Prime Minister.
Boris would have been mumbling under his breath. Of course. Oh dear. Have mercy, have mercy. Also, ladies and gentlemen, we wanted to say that of course there were other winners on the night. Jordan Henderson came the runner-up for his Liverpool side, while their manager Jurgen Klopp won Coach of the Year. I like Jurgen Klopp. You know, he's not a black man, but he's very close to a black man. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and he seems to have that kind of black man swagger to him. You know?
Yeah, super cool German.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Super cool.
Always cool. I just love the way. I love listening to his interviews. Next to Mourinho, I do enjoy listening. It's just so cool and calculated the way he looks at things. You know, he doesn't get ruffled too much.
Nah, not at all, mate. He's not taking on this British nonsense in any shape or form whatsoever. Janice Bell says, Christopher Gatt, my brother-in-law, keep your Grenadian roots. Check out his legendary granddad's driving around Grenada. So, is his granddad is known for driving in Grenada? Is this a news flash? Is this an exclusive? Tell us some more, please, Janice. So I'm just saying, hey, you want to read about his granddad back in the day, back home in Grenada, Grenadian driving. You know what? We'll look this up and see if we can feature it in weeks to come. But again, warm greetings going out to Christopher Gatt, Trevor White as well. Thank you for joining us. And also Anne's the urban psychotherapist. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Mr. C, it's always nice to see more gentlemen on the show.
Listen, for once we've got more gentlemen, you know, because the views were a little bit
no, the views were good, man. We were just inundated with ladies. We love the ladies, but we like to see some gentlemen balance out the thing, you know.
You know, God, the ladies them know for chat, you know. We're not trying to say nothing bad about the ladies, what you know. Chat.
Good evening, Tracy.
We love everybody's comments. Whether we agree with your comments or not, we welcome them. This is not YouTube. You know, if you've got different opinions to us, we're not gonna shut you down. You have a right to your opinion. You have a right to your own voice. And we here at What a Week, we welcome all views, whether they're for our views or against. We welcome you. It's an open forum. We want to move things on, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, just wanted to check something. Okay, sorry, my bad. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, Steve McQueen, I do believe, had an award. It's a difficult one for me, Tony. Yeah, Steve McQueen's Lovers Rock, ladies and gentlemen. It's been nominated and has won a film for best film of the year.
You know, when I found this news, I said I'm going to send it to you. You know, we had a very lively discussion after the show aired, with varying viewpoints about, you know, trying to be constructive, but also looking at the good points of it. But the critics who basically awarded this film this award couldn't stop praising it.
Just to put it into
honestly,
just to put it into context, that the Sight and Sound, this is the BFI, the British Film Institute's magazine. It's a journalist, so it's very esteemed journalists who write in this particular magazine. So they pick 50 films of 2020 and they thought that Lovers Rock was the top film out of 2020. It makes you almost want to say, me no want to see the other 49 if this was the best. Me no want to see the other 49. Me no want to hear about them. Me no want to see about them. We don't want to know about them. If this is, however, you know, it was a remarkable list, though, Tony. Out of these other 50 films, I mean, I haven't seen them myself. However, what I did like about the actual nominations of these other films was that at least in the top 10, 7 of them were entries by our females, by women. Including the number 2 entry, which was directed by Garrett Bradley. And again, that film Time is supposed to be amazing, absolutely amazing. So it'll be interesting to find out from the judges, you know, what was it about Lovers Rock? What made that their choice, their top choice? I would love to find out. So I'm going to try and find the articles online and actually probably see if anybody from the BFI is open for a conversation or to join us here on What a Week to let us know their views.
I did do a read up on this, and
okay, go on, Tony.
I think one of the things that struck at me was that they weren't there, right? So what they're looking at is a piece of filmmaking.
Right.
You understand? So
they're looking at the cinematography of it.
Right. It'll be like watching Star Wars or something like that. You know, you haven't been to space, you haven't had but you're watching a piece and you're judging it as a piece of film.
Right.
And there were certain bits in it that stuck out to the critics that they enjoyed. Actually, it's the bits that we hate the most, funnily enough.
I could imagine. Oh, the moment when I saw the Rasta man spinning on the floor.
Right.
Taking off his clothes in a euphoric ganja in friends moment. Oh my gosh. It made me feel like I was almost at Notting Hill Carnival. Not that I've ever been to Notting Hill Carnival because it's dangerous, you know, it's dangerous, absolutely dangerous, and you shouldn't go if you're Caucasian. However, it gave me a feeling and a sense of the moment. Marvelous, bravo, McQueen, bravo.
So they pointed out the attempted rape scene as one that stuck out to them. The 10-minute Janet Kay encore they thought was quite impressive, and the scene with the 2 girls in the room. These were things that they highlighted about the film and whatever they thought the plot was. So they looked at all of those things, and this is what influenced them to make that judgment.
Well, you know, it makes us think to ourselves, what do we know about films? Because we're
judging it because we were there, and we're looking for authenticity.
Yeah.
You know, film critics are not looking for authenticity because for the most part they weren't there. They're looking at a piece of film, they're looking at narrative, right? They're looking at pacing, right? You know, how you change scenes and you know, flow and all that sort of thing, which none of us are looking at that. We're just looking at, oh, they didn't do this, the accents were dodgy, this didn't go on. But the critics aren't looking at any of those things, and that's why they differ to us in their opinion.
Exactly. No, you know what? It's always good to know. So, I mean, look, I think that what we should do is we should no longer get upset with these kind of polls or these kinds of awards. I think that we are more than capable as a collective of people to have our own awards or to have our own vote. So, you know, we've seen the Small Axe series. You have your keyboard in front of you, be it on your mobile phone or, you know, your tablets or your TVs. We say vote now. Out of the series of Small Axe, which do you think was your favorite? Cast your votes now, please, ladies and gentlemen. Tony, I'll ask you for your vote.
I would say probably the Leroy Logan story.
And why? Why that particular story?
You know, he's an idealist, isn't it? You know, he wanted to go in on the inside of the police force to try and make changes, and then gets his family gets caught up in issues with the police, and then he's got these conflicting feelings. I think it was done. My only issue with the show was that it kind of ended too abruptly for my liking. I think there's so much to his story that needs to be told. But overall, yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed his story.
Yeah. Our viewers say all of the other Steve McQueen films deserved an award, barring Lovers Rock. That was Henny. Trevor White says, did Steve McQueen win the award for Lovers Rock or for the series of Small Axe? It was for Lovers Rock. There was no mentioning of the other, no mentioning of any of the others at all. It's very funny that all the others were kind of like a proper reflection of the black experience in Britain, as opposed to Lovers Rock was a little bit more, how can I put it, a little bit more fantasy, a bit more of a fantastical kind of point of view.
No, I mean, I disagree. I think they were in the right place, and there were just suspect moments in the show.
Okay.
I mean,
probably I'm being too harsh, Tony. Yeah. Probably I'm being too harsh. Who knows? It looked like somebody's fantastical thought to me, but what do I know? I've never been in the head of an award-winning movie making guru. The votes are coming in. Angela Cozier says Education was amazing. Viv Rose says Mangrove. Sharon Spice Gibson says Mangrove. Denise Francis says Mangrove. Glow says Mangrove. Whatever. Trevor White agrees with you, Tony. Leroy Logan. Charmaine Bradshaw's second option was Leroy Logan. Who else? Films based on true stories are always a winner for me, says Antigan Allison. So what is your choice, Antigan? What did you go for? You went for Mangrove 9. There you go. They were great films, Henny. We totally agree with you. And Charmaine, yes, the last one about education was an absolutely enlightening and moving dramatization, and getting all my words tongue-tied, because for me, I think it was Mangrove. That holds dear to me, because like Ladbroke Grove is just down the road. I've heard the stories from my father, from my stepfather, from my uncles, about having to fight on the streets of Ladbroke Grove. So that was really, that hit home for me. And again, being a young male in the Northwest London area, having problems with the police for no apparent reason at all, going through the riots, you know, throwing, how can I put it, throwing words of protests at the police.
Yes.
I don't want to say bottles, because it alludes to a crime. So it was words of protest I used to throw at the police.
Power.
Yeah. Metaphorically speaking.
Yes. Tracy says Leroy Logan first and Mangrove second. Yeah, I agree with you, Tracy.
There you go. Thank you, Tracy Angel. So Janice says, and that might just be their thought process. Vote based on their fantasy of what they believe black people to be all about. Could very well be. I
don't know if I agree with that, to be honest with you. I think they probably don't really care what black people are all about. They just, as I said, I think they looked objectively at a piece of film and looked at the narrative, and they really enjoyed it. Do you know what I mean? And they probably would have said, based upon that, oh well, is this what black people used to do back in the day? Having no idea. I'm not sure if it necessarily fitted the perception that they had. Yeah, I think it was just the film that they looked at and they said, look, the character development, the build up, the scenes, do you know the way it ended? We think that this is probably the best film.
And to be honest with you, it's probably something that they've never seen for a long time. I mean, when was the last time we had a film in that era with that kind of genre of music, with that kind of relationship between people? So for them, it's probably something really refreshing. Again, as you said, Tony, that they have no knowledge of the actual feeling of that time and the how can I put it, the life of that time. So it's oblivious to them how we would feel about the negative moments in that film. So they would see it just from a neutral point of view and probably really enjoyed it.
Mm.
Hence why it won Best Film.
And we've got our biases, you see.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, you know what, sometimes it's very difficult for us as people of color, as black people, as Africans displaced throughout the world, to sometimes, you know, even though we may not approve, sometimes we still have to put our hands together and give credit where it's due. So Steve McQueen, Lovers Rock, we wouldn't have word for it, but you'll get something. So it's a bit almost like when I won Best Newcomer in the Comedy Awards, and I brought that trophy home and I showed it to my mum, and I had a sense of pride in me, Tony, because it's been 2 years since I've been doing stand-up comedy. I've been up against my peers and I've won Best Newcomer. I've got this award. I've collected it from a comedy legend. I've brought it to my mum's house to show to my mum. I said, Mum, look, this is... My mum said, is that Harlem Gio? Oh, well.
Mm.
And then
imagine the critics that you had when you picked up that award and people saying, how did he win that? Do you know what I mean?
100%, bro.
You got people who would have supported, Mr. C's the funniest thing since sliced bread. Other people like, I don't hear a joke the man tell. How do you win that award? So,
Exactly.
so you're just never going to please the crowd. And you can't try. You can just make your movie and hope that it will get widespread acceptance.
There you go. So we give Steve McQueen and his crew their props. We wish them well. Hopefully they'll take on some of the recommendations and the comments that we've made. And when Small Axe Series 2 gets commissioned, that he will take those comments and those recommendations on board and produce things of an even higher standard. And those of you who are still not happy, I tell you what, why not create your own? That's the best way forward. Tony, we've got the comments popping off there. What else can you see, my brother?
Yes, so we're I'm looking at Jared. Jared says he's watching from Congo. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the show.
Big up for all the way from the Congo.
What does Alison? What Alison says there? Is that?
I think she's talking the same kind of language as some of the characters in Lovers Rock. Is that all the Gio? My mom. Is that all the Gio? Why? Hey, listen, nothing like a mother's grounding, mate. No. And after that, you know, seriously, because before, I'm not even gonna lie, I think the year before, I thought that I deserved to have got the Best Newcomer for all the hard work that I've done. And when I didn't get it, I was deflated. I'm not gonna lie, it put a dent in my soul, man. But after my mum's comments, it was like, why are you begging it for? You know when you've done good, when you've done good. You know when you're doing good. So, you know, don't wait for people to reward you. Reward yourself. And I say that to any actors watching this as well. You know, absolutely forget about Oscars, forget about BAFTAs and everything. Reward yourself. Absolutely reward yourself. And in any kind of profession you do. Yeah. So there you go.
Alison said Congo and not Kenya. I'm sure I said Kenya. I'm sorry if I said Congo. Did I say Congo?
You said Congo, yeah.
Sorry, forgive me. Yes, look, and I got my glasses on, she says.
Congo, Kenya. It's the same place, isn't it? Eh? It's like Peckham and Croydon. They're near each other, aren't they? You black people, so fussy, mate. Eh? So what? Lenny Henry or Mo Gilligan, it's the same thing, innit? They're both funny geezers, aren't they? Yeah? So what if we get them mixed up, yeah? Muhammad Ali and AJ, yeah? They're both boxers. Get over yourselves, honestly.
Yes, Alison, that's right. and you know, the comments on this show run really quickly, and the comments on here run slowly, and I can't see them.
Yeah.
It's a text.
Keeping things moving, ladies and gentlemen. Our next story, what a wonderful story this is. Please, let's have a look at this next headline. Sutton High School becomes the first to sign up to the Black Hairstyles Pledge. For those of you who are not familiar with this particular initiative, a group of young ladies have set up what they call the Halo Effect or the Halo Pledge. And this is all about Black women, especially young girls, owning the beauty of their own hair and not allowing any industries or professions to make your hair or your hairstyle illegal. So this is what they've done. They've set up this Halo Pledge, and this wonderful young lady at her school in Sutton High School, she got her school to be the first active school, the first active company to take up this pledge. And it featured on the news. And let's have a look at the video.
Because your school, Sutton High, is the first school to adopt the Halo Code in the whole of the UK.
These are the lessons they may never forget.
With the introduction of the Halo Code, Black and mixed students can finally feel they are accepted, and they'll be able to embrace their natural hair without feeling like they are different or have to change themselves.
The Halo Code is a guide for employers and schools. The aim, to prevent discrimination against those with Afro-textured hair. This is a celebration and an exercise in confronting prejudice.
In one of my previous schools, I got told off a lot for wearing my ponytail like on the top of my head. It made me feel quite sad, but yeah.
How old are you?
10.
And the creators of the code are just a handful of years older, still part of an education system that often penalizes Black and mixed pupils over their hair.
Being taken out of lessons, being told off in front of class, it lowers your morale, it makes you miss lessons. It's not necessary, to be honest.
I think it's important that schools pick it up because those are your formative years. Those are where you learn most of your lessons, where your personality starts to develop, where you start to gain a real sense of what the world's actually like. And if it's implemented in schools, we want that to be an extension into the workplace as well. So Black people of all ages can feel accepted, can feel celebrated, and know that they don't have to face any barriers.
Last week, one step forward when the code was taken on by a global corporation. Today, some feel the government took 2 steps back when a minister labelled parts of the conversation on equality as fashion.
While it's true that people in these groups suffer discrimination, the focus on protected characteristics has led to a narrowing of the equality debate that overlooks socioeconomic status and geographic inequality.
What are you saying to that?
Things like race, things like gender are so interlinked with poverty. So to try to separate those issues can't be done in that way.
To quote Liz Truss, the new approach to equality will be about individual dignity and humanity, not quotas, targets, or equality of outcome. Whilst debate unfurls on social media, these young people are making change in real life.
I know when I was in year 6, no one ever spoke about these things. No one actually cared. So to kind of 10 years later to come back and see that people that were my age once are so excited, and it's honestly so beautiful to see.
Absolutely beautiful, beautiful, man. You know what? Watching that, when I saw, it brought a warmth to my heart that I can't even explain, man. You know, Tony, how do you feel about our princesses when you see something like that, man?
I mean, that story made me sad, to be honest with you. That we should say thank you for allowing us to wear our hair the way we wear our hair. Do you know what I mean? It's like pushing you 2 steps backwards, right? And then saying, here, take this, that's 1 step forward, you've actually accomplished something. When it should have been there all the time.
Yeah, most definitely.
And I think that's a problem that Black girls have endured for generations in the English school system, you know.
Yeah,
this
girls
whole thing
and
about,
women.
And women, yeah. And yeah, in the workplace. Mostly those. I mean, there have been some cases with boys with dreadlocks. But mostly girls and women who have basically had to endure that either at school or in the workplace. And all of a sudden, okay, we've got this halo thing and, you know, we're all supposed to be happy about it. I mean, no, not really. You it's clear discrimination, and then you're saying, well, here we are, we're giving you a little token so you can wear your hair how you want. So I'm not buying the story as a means of being happy. To me, it just demonstrates how far behind things are for us.
Well, I hear you, Tony, but I think we've got to look at it as a step forward. And it's not so much that it's something what's been given to us. It's something that these young ladies have set up this Halo Code, number one, to raise awareness of this injustice and this discrimination. And number two, they've inspired now another young girl who's in a school. I've got to mention that this school, Sutton High School, is a private school in Southwest London. And it's one girl's efforts to say, I'm going to talk about this Halo Code and I'm going to champion it for my school to stand up and make a pledge of difference. And I think that's the way forward. We cannot be waiting on the so-called authorities to make the changes that we want to see. We have to implement them. So I think from this point of view, to see our young females moving in such a positive light, because a lot of the females in our age group have experienced this discrimination and haven't really felt empowered to do anything about it. That, you know, we can see the effects of this. And ladies, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the effect of some of this is that a lot of our females are wearing hairstyles to work, which they probably wouldn't if it wasn't for this bias and this discrimination, which has been force-fed to them from such an early age, which made them think negative things, probably subconsciously, about their hair and their hairstyles. I could be wrong, though. But yeah,
I mean, I agree with you from a point of view that it's a step forward when we ourselves take action. My sadness is that the situation exists in the way it does. Do you know what I mean? Which something that we know is, you know, it's a natural hair. It's your natural hairstyle, and yet, you know, it's almost like being criminalized.
Yeah. I mean, I want to pick up on some of the comments, Tony. Just help me with some of them, please. First of all, we're going to go to Anik. Anik says, the Halo Guide is great, but what sort of world do we live in that we have to ask permission to wear our hair in a way that is natural to us? The exact point that Tony's trying to make as well, and I do believe that, because even with my sons, man, it's very borderline with me in the school. Whereas, you know, my sons have their hair cut a certain way, then the schools. But I always say to their mum, butt out of this and let me deal with it, because there's no way. Because I'll go into school and I expect every single teacher, and if any teacher's got their hair scruffy, then no, this is a conflict of interest. No way, no, not having it. Tony?
I mean, even when you cut lines in your hair, right, for your son, you're going to get some sort of word from the school saying that this is inappropriate and we don't want children's heads looking like tennis balls. You know what I mean? And this is just part of a, you know, it's not even an isolated case. It's just part of a long-running historical prejudice. You know, you're not acceptable unless you have your hair in the way that we say. We have set the standard, and that standard must be obeyed. And that's the problem here.
Well, it's almost as though they always try to stamp out our light and our brightness. And the fact that, again, it's the old rhetoric of, you're not allowed to have your own language. You're not allowed to have your own religion. You're not allowed to have your own name. And hell be it that you are allowed to wear your hair naturally. How dare you, you little uppity.
Right. Donna says, I applaud the girls, don't get me wrong. I just think I think the government have a bloody cheek. And the media, make us think that we're thankful. Yeah, you know what, Donna? I'm with you all the way.
Janice Bell says, gentlemen, try and get one of these young ladies on here to speak about this and share their passion more. I'm gonna say this. The young lady at Sutton High School, I actually know her mum, and I'm gonna ask her mum if she will actually come on the show, possibly for next week. So, and I'm going to contact the Halo Pledge as well. I'm following them on Instagram, So I'm gonna ask them if they will come on next week as well and talk about their experience and the reasons why they've done it, and again what kind of successes they've had with the whole thing. So, but again, ladies, we need you to start sharing your experiences. Have you been discriminated at work, at college, or at university, at school? What are your stories? What are stories of your children as regards to hair discrimination? Is this something which is really rife and happening all over the UK, all over London? Or is it just isolated incidents which probably every now and then it just relates to certain schools in certain areas of London where there's not really a large amount of black presence? What say you? What say you? Carolyn says, not before time. These ridiculous rules about hair, especially for boys, were written when black people did not have the access to these schools, especially. It's sad. It's sad, needs to be said, but we know it's just another form of discrimination we need to overcome.
Janice points out we never used to wear wigs. What was that? Let's have a look.
We never used to wear wigs or weave. And they had no say in the matter to believe that they can dictate how we can wear our hair. Oh, man. Ladies, and I want to bring in a guest, ladies and gentlemen, who I do believe he's got a daughter. So it'd be interesting to hear his thoughts and views. Please, can we welcome Emmanuel?
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Emmanuel. How you doing, sir?
Welcome to the show.
So,
Thank you for
Emmanuel,
having me.
Absolute pleasure to have you, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, you've got to understand, I was educated here in London, miseducated here in London with an English vernacular. So if I say your full name and I get it absolutely wrong, please, as an African, correct me straight away. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the founding director of the BAF, which is the British Urban Film Festival. His name is Emmanuel Anyim Oswig, MBE. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a rounding round of applause. And also, we'll talk the news later. Emmanuel, how you doing, sir?
Yes, it's Chukwuemeka Emmanuel Anyam Osigwe, MBE.
That's what I thought.
Lucky boy.
Yeah.
Your school teachers must have hated you. They must have been like, right, so in today's class, who we got here? We got Timothy Brown, present. Mark Anthony, present. Jonathan Smith, yeah. Winston Campbell, Emmanuel. Do you know that Emmanuel means God is with us? Do you know that?
A true story. There was a kid that called my surname Onion Bargy. You see, things I have to go through. But even when I got my MBE earlier this year, they actually didn't take my Emmanuel name. They actually called me Chukwuemeka. So when it came to me going up to Prince Charles to get my medal, the speaker literally they'd rehearsed it. They told me afterwards that they had spent 3 days making sure that they didn't get my name wrong. And they had a sweepstake to make sure that whoever messed up had to pay a forfeit. So literally, I heard my name, Chukwuemeka Anyam Osigwe, and I looked up to the heavens because my mom and dad are not here, and I said, look at the respect, you see? So
beautiful.
There we are.
And I love that, man. I love the fact that you said you looked up to the heavens, because that's you know, your parents worked so hard to bring you up in this country against so many obstacles. And, you know, the fact that you always give glory to them, Emmanuel, man, is something which I really love about you. So let's put things into perspective. You've got a daughter, I do believe, yeah?
Yes, she's 22 months old. Lavender Ngozi. Yes.
So what's your feelings as regards to if your daughter goes to school and they say, well, you know, look, you know, it's lovely. She's a lovely girl, but you know, these little things what you're doing with her hair, you know, stop it. It's confusing the other children. It's a distraction for the other children.
Well, in many ways, we've kind of always planned ahead as a family. So my wife, Claire, is a qualified teacher. So we've always had these conversations in that when the children came, that they'd be taught at home. So there'd be none of these school issues at all. So that's basically our approach to education. It's all going to be done at home.
Wow. And why did you make that decision?
Well, I guess it's just respecting what my wife wants in many ways. And the fact that she, like I said, is a qualified school teacher. So she has many talents and skills which she's brought to the party, that she's brought to my life, and now that she's going to bring to our child. So there's no reason why that shouldn't stop now that we're parents, and the homeschooling is just a natural thing to do. Plus the fact that we're so busy as creatives in terms of what we do in film and television and everything else, that is just good for Lavender to be around us when we're kind of in our prime. So there's that as well.
So Emmanuel, talk us through. It's the year is coming up to 2005. You know, you're seeing a lack of representation of Black British film. What? Talk us through what was going through your mind at that time.
How long have we got? I'll try and keep it brief because there was a lot going on in 2005. Let me tell you. Let me try and keep this as brief as possible. So the trigger, let me bring it to the trigger moment. So I was watching the FA Cup final, and I think it was Cardiff against Portsmouth.
Wow.
Very insignificant match, but it was significant because the person who scored the winning goal in the cup final was a certain Nwankwo Kanu. Those that love their football, Super Eagles, Nigeria, Arsenal, Inter Milan, Ajax. Kanu literally won everything in the game. And when he scored that goal and Portsmouth went on to win the cup, he was the first Nigerian to score in an FA Cup final. So he was making history. And it was in that moment after the match that I was kind of thinking, well, what am I doing? I was kind of in a drift, which is very rare for me. I'm always on something, but at that particular moment, I was in a drift. And I was speaking to my friend at the time, and we spoke for about 3 hours on the phone, just trying to make headway as to what's happening in the industry. Kidulthood was on the horizon. There was a lot of talk about this film with Noel Clarke and Adam Deacon and Femi Onirin and Emel Amin, and obviously 15 years on, look at what they're all doing. So it was like that moment that I thought, well, we need to be part of this Kidulthood movement because something big is about to happen. And the only reason why I had that sense was because of where I was coming from an industry perspective. So in 2002, after I graduated from university, I took on a summer job at Black Filmmaker Magazine. Now, for those who don't know who Black Filmmaker Magazine is, it's a magazine that came out twice monthly, and it was founded in 1998 by a certain Menelik Shabazz, who is the founder of the magazine and more prominently known as the director of Burning an Illusion. And it was when he returned from the Cannes Film Festival in 1997 that he realized that Black film was not being documented, was not being reported. And hence that's why the magazine became what it was, BFM, in 1998. I had heard about the magazine when I was a youth member at the National Film Theatre, which is BFI South Bank to the younger viewers. The older viewers will probably know it as NFT. And I saw the magazine in the massive BFI library there. And I thought, this is interesting. A magazine about Black film in the BFI. And I was there for hours. And that's where my love affair for Black film really just kind of blossomed. And then I got to know about the history of Menelik. And then I literally just harassed him. I wanted to work for him. I just wanted to be in this world of Black film. And this was 2002. So my wish was granted. I got to meet so many great people. I met Charles Thompson, who went on to found the Screen Nation Awards and himself got an MBE in 2011. And that's really where I kind of cut my teeth in this whole Black film industry. So it was BFM that gave me that start. And over these past 15 years, I've encountered severe loss. Obviously, I've mentioned mummy and daddy, but I also lost my younger brother to lung cancer at the age of 18, and this was in 2003. And it was at that point that I came up with an idea to just kind of remember his memory. And so working at BFM and just encountering that loss, I came up with an idea called Nights to Remember, which was a retrospective film festival paying tribute to famous Black entertainers who had passed away. So it just so happened that in 2003, when my brother died, that Gregory Hines had passed away and Ron O'Neill had passed away, all in the same year. So I used those figures to create this event called Nights to Remember, which ran for a couple of years. And unbeknown to me at the time, it became the test bed for Buff in 2005. So it was in 2005 when we launched Buff at the LWT building on the South Bank. And literally 4 days before, news came through that Richard Pryor had passed away, which is December the 10th, 2005. So what are we? A couple of weeks ago, the anniversary of Richard Pryor passing away. So what I decided to do to mark his memory was the first year of Buff was going to be dedicated to Richard Pryor. And as you well know, Mr. C, you were part of that tribute that I put together.
Absolutely wonderful tribute, man. And the fact that you know, you got his daughter Rain. Boy, yeah, man, good God.
Yeah, I mean I mean, to this day, it still gives me kind of goosebumps. The fact that Richard's daughter was there to receive the first British Urban Film Festival honorary award, which we dedicated to Richard Pryor. So we had the tribute, which you played a part of. Who else did we have? We had Travis J. We had Lateef Lovejoy, Femi Oyeniran. There's so many other comedians. Leo Mohammed. Yeah, literally, it was a who's who. It was a who's who. And obviously, Rain had no idea that this is what we had planned. What she also didn't know, and what the audience didn't know, was that when we recorded our launch in 2005, we did a tribute to Richard Pryor, which we played in front of her at the award ceremony. And she gave a very moving speech. And this was all in the same year that my mum had passed, 2015. So it was a very emotional night. And she just basically said that for a Black man to be a man of his word, to follow through and do what I've been doing with Buff is a testament to the legacy of her father. And obviously, can't speak higher than that, really. So that was the beginning of Buff 15 years ago. And over the past, sorry, what am I talking about? Yeah, 2015 was when we honoured Rain. 2005 was when we started the festival. So that's 10 years. Right. And then in the past 5 years, we've since honoured Noel Clarke, Ashley Walters, Amara Santi, and Will Johnson. And it's very important to me to respect the people that have gone before us, because there's a lot of people in our industry that willingly will not acknowledge the work that these people have done, not just on screen, but off screen as well, in terms of supporting the next generation coming through and just navigating the ins and outs of the industry. So there's a lot of things that these people do that overlooked. And I've always been about making sure that these people are fully recognized. And the fact that I'm able to do it with my own platform gives me a lot of satisfaction. And in many ways, what's happening now is that the wider industry is starting to cotton on to the fact that these people must be cherished at all times. And obviously you guys have been talking about Sir Steve McQueen and Small Axe. And obviously Steve is revered the world over. And it's great that everyone and his dog has been talking about Small Axe over the past 5 weeks, not just the storylines, but obviously from my point of view, the viewing figures, which was very interesting because I was expecting a very high number of people to be watching Small Axe week on week. And the fact that only 1.2 million watched the first episode, which was Mangrove, which for me was the best work that Steve has ever done. And when you think about 12 Years a Slave, when you think about Shane, which up until that point was one of my all-time favorite films. But when I saw Mangrove, I was just blown away by the performances, by the work, the attention to detail, the fact that BBC One gave him 2 hours to literally tell that story, a story which was largely unknown to the British population. And obviously everyone in the cast did the Mangrove 9 so much justice. I wasn't aware of the Mangrove 9, and for me to be a historian of black film, it was very important that I got to know that film, know that story, and know that the actors who portrayed those characters did so much justice. And here we are at the end of 2020 with our film festival now on Apple and so many other things that have happened this autumn. BAFTA accredited.
Let's put things in order first, young man. Let's put things in order first. So thank you for the short version.
Yes, I didn't say to you how long have we got, you know, but yeah.
But let's put things into perspective. So the MBE, first and foremost, it's for your services to Black and Asian films.
Black and minority ethnic films.
Black and minority ethnic films, I should say. It's because of the word ethnic, it jars me. But anyway, let's not get caught up in that. You must have had a few phone calls, Emmanuel, as regards to your soul. Because again, it seems like whenever one of our people are awarded an MBE or for services of the British Empire, that your soul seems to come into question. Are you giving up your soul? Have you given up your soul? Are you going to remember? Are you going to remember to remain and be the same person who you were before? And I think as much as we would like to make up our own minds, I think it's always best if we hear it from your mouth. So what does the MBE mean to you? How is it going to change or shape your future?
Well, first and foremost, everything that I have done to date has never been about seeking recognition. I've always been about looking after my own. And obviously in this context, it's the community at large, whether it's the audiences that are consuming our culture on screen, in books, in writing, on radio, wherever. I've always been about cherishing that culture, nourishing it, nurturing it, and protecting it, so that when my work is done, the next people that come after me can see the legacy that we have done. So with regards to the MBE, it wasn't something that I was looking for, but when it came, I said to myself, first and foremost, that I would take the MBE because there are countries in the world that don't do this for their people, for the greatness that they have done. So I think that's very important to acknowledge that in a country like ours, in spite of the history, and obviously for a lot of us, we were not there when all of this happened. But I take the point that for those of us that have parents and grandparents, that yes, they were a part of that history. But that aside, for our generation to receive that recognition is something that you can't take lightly. And so for me, it came with responsibility. But as a person, it didn't change me whatsoever. What I hope it will do is it will shine a light on the work that I have done, and that it will open more doors for people. And I have seen in the past 12 months that it has opened doors for a lot of people. Now, some people might call that paranoia or people jumping on the bandwagon, but I always believe that when the spirits are at work, that a lot of things happen. And it's not an accident. Nothing just happens. So the fact that we have Small Axe doing what it's doing, the fact that we have Black History Month, the fact that we have almost an extended Black History Month in the wake of George Floyd, where you had in the film and TV context, you had all the broadcasters seemingly stepping up, giving people primetime programs, 5-part series, going out in prime time, when 15, 20 years ago, the best you would get would be a 1-hour special at 11:30 in the evening. So, you know, we've moved on a lot from that. But as I've always said to many people, this is just the beginning. So I really hope that we grasp this nettle and that we all as one realize the responsibility that we all hold in first and foremost protecting the culture, recognizing what's gone before, and making sure that when we are at that level, that we don't work as hard, but just be the best example of ourselves as we can be. And that's always something that
I just want to pick up on something. Sorry, I just want to pick up on something that you've said there as regards to, you know, being authentic and making sure that we have a burden of responsibility, because like one of the comments, Deb says, it would be nice if he could tell the story of the New Cross fire. There are so many Black British historical events that explain some of the reasons why we're positioned in the way we are today. So do you think, like, because of Small Axe now, we have opened the eyes of the film and TV industry to say, look, there are so many stories like the New Cross fire, which need to be told, which should be told. Do you think that this now has opened the door for many more of those stories to come? I know, Tony, you've got a question as well. I'm going to come to you next, Tony. Yeah.
Sure, it's a great question, Karen. I mean, with the New Cross fire, I mean, there's so many stories. One thing that I've been blessed with the festival is because people have seen that there's a Black person running it, and that when they look at the press of Bath and the history of Bath, it's always been about Black people being allowed to tell their stories without permission, and we would not interfere in that. And 2 years ago, we had a film coming to the festival, which was a story about the Oval Four, which obviously you're aware of.
Sorry, say that again. The Oval
Four. That's what they were known as.
Four. Yes. Okay.
And the filmmaker who made that film was a certain Stephen S. Thompson, who went on to write Sitting in Limbo, which got broadcast on BBC One earlier this year, and is now working with the chair of BAFTA, Krishnendu Majumdar, into developing a primetime series next year. So there are stories that are being.
Hold on, sorry, Emmanuel. I just want the viewers to know. So, Sitting in Limbo was the Windrush scandal story. So a lot of people watched that. So just so that you're aware of exactly what we're talking about. Sorry, continue.
Yes, indeed. Yes. So Sitting in Limbo was something that Stephen wrote, and that was based on his brother. So it was based on a true story as to what happened in 2018 at the height of the 70th anniversary celebrations of Windrush. And obviously his brother was in the news, and that's the story which was put on screen on BBC One earlier this summer, played by Patrick Robinson, Nadine Marshall, an all-star cast. It was co-produced by Fiona Lamptey, who is now working at Netflix, director of UK features. And Fiona is someone who I've had the pleasure of knowing at the festival over the years. So it's great to see people of my generation just kind of being involved in these projects at the very highest level.
So we're in a good position. Tony.
Yes, hi, Manuel. I wanted to ask, where is the sort of Black British film industry now? Are they at a place where they will be able to actually start making their own productions? Are there plans, do you think, in the long term to, you know, similar sort of like Tyler Perry or on a smaller scale, to create Black studios where Black productions can take place and completed projects can be sort of submitted? Are we ever going to get to that stage, do you think?
It's a great question, Tony. And I think one of the great things as Black people is we have a very go-getting attitude. Tyler is a great example of that. Nollywood, which is otherwise known as the Nigerian film industry, is largely built on that go-getting attitude of churning out a film every week. Nigeria makes 500 films a year, and it's the third largest industry in the world. And Nigeria is not waiting for anyone to say, tell your stories. And now you have a situation where you have Netflix now parking its lawn in Nigeria. And I'm sure all the other streamers will follow suit in much the same way as Bollywood has been able to carve out its own niche and have its own range of channels on platforms like Sky. Obviously, from our point of view, we do have channels, but I would say not on the level of our counterparts in Asia. But that's not to say that we can't get there. We have a very large base of talented people off screen, behind the screen, the gatekeepers, the commissioners, because we don't have enough of those people as well making the decisions as to what gets commissioned, what gets green light. Fiona, who I've mentioned, is someone who is in that position now at Netflix. There are other people like Anne Mensah, who's also at Netflix, who was formerly at Sky, and who commissioned Bulletproof, amongst other projects. So there's a lot of people that are in those positions to make things happen. As for the empowerment in terms of having our own studios, I guess for many people, if they have that vision to have that studio, nothing should really get in their way. They should collaborate, find people with like-minded approaches to having the bricks and mortar, getting the finance, but more importantly, having the stories and the content, because right now content is king. There's an arms race right now in terms of streamers falling over themselves for content. And for Black creatives, it's a great time to be in that position to have content ready to be picked up by any and every broadcaster, whether it's Netflix or the BBC or black organizations like Stars in the States or Quelly or UMC, etc. There's loads of companies out there. So anyone that's watching this, I would urge you to just do your research diligently, read the trades. There's a lot of trades out there. For Black creatives, there's shadowandact.com in the States. Here in the UK, we have people like Simone Pennant, who's also an MB, who's got the Tiwi Collective, and she does a lot of work in making sure that Black people have an entry into the industry to either work at the commissioning level or whatever level.
Triforce as well is another one.
Triforce, yes. Fraser, Jimmy Akingbola, loads of people doing great stuff. Triforce do the Dandy organization. You've got the British Blacklist, Akura Jamfi, who does loads of things. So again, these are all people that I've had the pleasure of knowing over the years, and it's great that we're all moving in a direction now as we enter 2021, where we're now making change on the inside as well as on the outside.
Talking about change on the inside. So look, time is short. However, I think it's important that we've had you as a guest on the show to show people that change is happening, because we've been talking a lot about Lovers Rock and various other films. But again, what you're doing with the festival is absolutely amazing. But there's two things we want to pick up on. I'll pick up the first one, and Tony will pick up the second. I want to talk briefly as well, Emmanuel, as regards to your appointment to BAFTA. You know, for me, it's, again, we watch these awards ceremonies, which, because, you know, the BAFTAs is like the British Oscars. And for years we've been watching this, and again, we know that we've got talent. We know that we've got our stories, and yet we're not seeing a reflection of those in the voting or the nominations or even in the award process. There has been change, however. So tell us about your association with BAFTA. How did that come about, and what you're looking to do with that position that you're in?
So again, like with the MB, I wasn't seeking to be part of BAFTA, and how it all came about was in 2018, when I heard the sudden death of Victor Adibodun at the age of 33. Now, for those that don't know who Victor is, Victor was a very prolific, prominent and successful Black British male producer, of which there weren't that many. Victor had worked on Coronation Street. He was a director of episodes there, had an advertising and marketing background. And in 2015, he got on board a project called Venus versus Mars, which was a web series initially. But upon meeting executives at Sky at Cannes, they then turned that web series into a 10-part TV series, which aired on Sky Living. And such was the confidence that Sky had in that project that they actually scheduled Venus versus Mars alongside Scandal with Kerry Washington. At that time, that was huge. So that was really what catapulted Victor's company, Purple Gecko, which he co-created with Femi Oyeniran and Babi Isako. And they went on to develop loads of projects on screen and off screen. And then, like I said, in 2018, Victor passed suddenly. And it's still a shock to me just talking about Victor. So at that time, I paid tribute to Victor. I read an obituary for the Voice newspaper. I did a live tribute on Colourful Radio. And then 6 months after that, what I tend to do every day is I Google British London Film Festival to see what's been talked about with regards to our organisation. And then I see BAFTA's name come up in the search engine. So I'm thinking, what are BAFTA doing with Buff? And then as it turned out, I looked further, and BAFTA had then published the obituary that I wrote about Victor without my permission. So already there were alarm bells ringing, thinking, I'm sure I should be getting a phone call or an email saying, Emmanuel, would you mind us? I didn't get any of that. And then when I then read the piece, there's no accreditation that I wrote it. So obviously they've passed it off as their own. They did say it was The Voice's article, but as it turned out, The Voice were not aware that this article was being published. And then on the introduction of the obituary, they then said that Victor was the CEO of the British Urban Film Festival.
Oh my days!
Victor's dead, and I'm the CEO. So you've got that conflation, and then there's obviously the stereotype of black men looking all the same. So there was all sorts of things that were starting to ring. So I got in touch with my solicitor friend, someone I went to secondary school with. Again, just fortunate to be around a generation of people, and I'm sure as black people, we always have that generation of people that we grow up with that go on to do great things. And I'm very fortunate to have a friend, like I said. I also went to secondary school with Heartless Crew, and also with Jay Bothroyd, who played for Arsenal and is now doing big things in Japan. So that's my generation. Just put that out there. But yes, so bringing it back to BAFTA. So what happened was my solicitor friend said to me, I know what you're probably thinking, go and sue them, but get the apology, move on. Forever is a long time. Just keep doing what you're doing with the festival. And then we fast forward to 2020, and George Floyd had passed away. And in the days after George Floyd passed, a lot of organizations, white organizations, were proclaiming their solidarity for black people. And one of these organizations were BAFTA. Now, for me, I wasn't really kind of following what was going on with George Floyd. It was a very kind of hard time for us all. To this day, I've not watched the video because spiritually, it's not something that I am about with any of that stuff. So if you told to me about any of those people that got shot live on Facebook, I've not watched any of those clips at all.
Protect your soul, my brother. Protect your soul.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. Sometimes you have to watch it just to understand. But for me, if I've not been privy to it, then I shouldn't really be part of it in any way. But obviously, when I saw what was going on with BAFTA, the trigger then occurred to me that this is the same organization that did what they did to me 2 years ago. So I then felt compelled to call out BAFTA online. You called them out. I called them out. In the middle of the night, there's 5 tweets with the receipts, with the screen grabs of what they did. And a lot of newspapers had picked up on the story. The Voice picked up on it, Pride Magazine Nigeria, Evening Standard were about to go big on the story. And then, as it so happened, David Oyelowo was then giving a talk about why Selma not getting recognized at the Oscars, and that was because of his protest for Eric Garner, and he wore I Can't Breathe t-shirts. So literally you had my story and David's story coming out at the same time. Now obviously they were going to pick David's story because I'm not on the level of David, but I'm not about comparisons anyway. But obviously the white organizations were. In an ideal world, they'd carry both stories just to kind of further the point as to why we're still being treated the way that we are. So to that extent, when the story got out, the chair of BAFTA, who was 1 week into the job, reached out to me, wanting to apologize. I wanted a public apology, not just for me, but for the family of Victor as well. So what then happened was he put out an 8,000 word apology online in the trades. And then at that point, I just said, okay, let's start talking, because there's clearly some things that we need to just kind of talk about, clear the air, and just kind of move forward, because I'm always about moving forward. My glass is always half full. I'm never about BAFTA, but yet they wanted me to get involved. And obviously you talked about the film awards and obviously the heat that they had earlier in the year from the likes of Steve McQueen, basically saying that BAFTA will be irrelevant if they fail to recognize creative talent. And so obviously they addressed that with their film review, which Noel Clarke was part of, and which BAFTA invited me to be part of. And then they were literally falling over themselves, just asking me, well, what can we do for Buff? How can we help you? How can we support you? How can we kind of raise the profile of Buff even further than what you've done for 15 years? Now, to this point, I got the MBE without BAFTA's recognition or anyone's help, to be honest with you. So it's like, I didn't really need that much, but when I put my shopping list together, everything that I've asked for to date, they've pretty much given to me. I had to go through a process, but yeah, they've followed through. And 2 weeks ago, I had a 90-minute conversation with the chair of BAFTA and the film committee, which you can watch on our website at BritishUrbanFilmFestival.co.uk. A very full and frank conversation, deconstructing a lot of myths about BAFTA and about what happened at the Film Awards. And I'm very grateful that they were very open about the organization, about what they've learned about themselves, and obviously going forward, how they are looking to embrace Black and minority ethnic creatives. And obviously, to that extent, they've already started to do that with the pledge to invite 1,000 new members from, in their words, underrepresented communities into the academy. But like I said, we're only just getting started in this process. We're only just getting started. But long may it continue.
Listen, Emmanuel, that is a wonderful insight into what's happening at the moment with British film, and also the inclusion of the Black presence within the film. Tony, I know, I'm so sorry, Tony. I know you've had this question for a while. Go on, my brother.
No. He's actually covered it, to be honest with you. I mean, he's been sort of very thorough. You know, what we're looking for, obviously, is having that representation to tell that story without having to pander to audiences by inserting things in stories that are not true. And I'm glad to hear we're moving forward where we're eventually going to get in that direction. Yeah, it's good.
So look, just to close up, Emmanuel, Buff has now moved on to a new platform where we can see some amazing films, Black British content, and various other bits, specials from around the world, I do believe. Please tell us where we can find this new platform, who is the partnership with, and what can we expect to see? When's it available?
So, in August this year, once it became clear that Buff was not going to host its festival in the traditional environment of a cinema, Apple...
This is the live festival we're talking, yeah?
This is the live festival.
Yeah, for those who are not watching.
Apple, the organization, reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I just spiritually thought there's only one reason why Apple would reach out to me. And so I just kind of followed through and said, I'm looking for a home for the festival. Can you help? And they said, yes, this is what we can do. Actually, in the beginning, they actually promised to give me a pop-up channel on the Apple TV app, which is insane. It's unheard of. No one is given that. But once they heard the backstory of Buff, they just thought, well, we're just going to give you as much respect as possible. So we're going to give you a room where you can host all of your film festival selections. It's been a very thorough process because you can't just get onto Apple. There's a very thorough QC process, not just editorially, but in terms of the quality of the products that you're putting out there, because Apple is always about customer satisfaction. So to that extent, all the films that you see on the Apple TV app are of the very highest standard, and not just from a visual point of view, but from an editorial point of view. And obviously that comes from our curation as a festival. So we've selected 71 films, which you can see on the Apple TV app. If you search British Urban Film Festival, you will find us there. On our website, you will find another 16 selections, and our address is www.britishurbanfilmfestival.co.uk. They're all out there just in time for Christmas, so you can watch the films to your heart's content. We've got filmmaker Q&As running daily on our website. We've got Spotify podcasts, and we've also got our Buff Award ceremony hosted by Femi Oyeniran going out on Christmas Day. So look out for that. Loads of surprises, but it's a great time to be a Black creative, and for us as a festival, it's our biggest yet. And for us to be on Apple, it's an absolute privilege to be able to serve Black filmmakers and filmmakers in general who would not normally have that opportunity. So I hope that we're going to be there forever. and I very much hope that that's going to open even more bigger doors where we are having our own channels, because obviously we don't own Apple, but I'd like to think in the next 5 to 10 years that we will have our own version of it. And there are iterations of this, not in the UK, but internationally. There are organizations that are starting to develop their own platforms. So the UK has got a bit to do in that regard, but as long as everything is moving in the direction that it is right now, not just off screen, but on screen, I think in about a year's time, if we have this conversation again, I think we'll be talking about some major things,
Fantastic. Listen, Emmanuel, man, thank you so much for being here, sharing your journey and your experience with us. It gives us great hope that there seems to be a window at the moment where, we've been saying it for weeks, myself and Tony and quite a few other people, that there seems to be a window. This almost feels like Moses has parted the Red Sea for us as people to walk through places where we've never been able to walk before. And we wish you well. So again, that's the black. Sorry, repeat the website for us one more time, please.
Sure. www.britishurbanfilmfestival.co.uk. Our Instagram and Twitter is Buff Connect with an S at the end, so you can find out everything that's happening. But the website is where you can watch 16 films right now, and the Apple TV app, search British Urban Film Festival, and you'll find 71 films all there for you to watch over Christmas and the New Year.
There you go. So again, like for myself, I've just got a new Apple iPhone. It comes with Apple TV. The first thing I'm going to subscribe to is Buff. The first thing I'm going to search is Buff. I ask you all, if you've got an Apple app or Apple TV app, please do the same so that we can support our British black filmmakers. Can we give him a wonderful round of applause one more time? Emmanuel Anyim Asegwe, MBE.
I'll let you off on that.
I'm getting better.
You're getting better.
And Emmanuel,
listen,
we want you to come back on the show sometime next year to let us know how things have been progressing.
Pleasure. Yeah, happy to do that for sure.
Listen, take care, man. And give my regards to your wonderful wife and child as well, man. God bless you, man.
Thank you. Happy Christmas to you both. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
You too, man. God bless.
Stay safe.
Wow.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Listen. And I've got to say, you know what? I've known Emmanuel since 2005, and he is the same person, with or without the accolades, with or without the titles, with or without the connections to Apple, to BAFTA. He has got his heart and soul is about putting black British filmmakers on the map and to that level par where the rest of the industry is. And I'm just glad to see that everything's just working out fine for him. And it's not something that he's just been doing overnight. He's been tirelessly working at this for years, decades, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, I know there were so many comments in there, but because we just wanted to give Emmanuel his time to tell his story. So we thank you all for all of your contributions within the comments as well. There's so many to go through, but we thank you all for them. Our final story before we hand over to Tony for our Black History Month spectacular is wow, this next headline, wow, Jamaicans, wow, press release, whoa, UK citizens flying to Jamaica, worries there could be trouble. Tony, we can't even go a yard.
No, I mean it wasn't easy before with all the form filling and COVID testing that you had to do to actually get out of the airport in Mobay. And now I think this is probably on the backlash with what's going on here, of course, in the UK, and Jamaicans are basically tightening up their borders.
Definitely, and look, Jamaica's saying, we don't want you can't come here. It's not happening. So yeah, if you're looking at a little getaway flight to Jamaica, you may as well forget it, mate. Jamaica's not having us. And you know what? It's not just Jamaica. I was kind of surprised. I was like, what is Jamaica carrying on like that for, man? Like we got the lurgies or something. Caroline, you left at the right time, darling.
Yes, she did.
It's not just Jamaica. As regards to, if you're thinking of traveling to Europe, the list reads Australia, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, Ireland. And Ireland is next door. Hungary, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Russia. It goes on and on and on. There's a lot of places where we cannot fly to at the moment. We are really and truly under some kind of proper lockdown. You know, like when you did something wrong and your mother say, "You're not leave this house here for the next 2 weeks." We're under that kind of lockdown.
She goes out and locks the door. She locks the mortise lock and you can't come out.
Outside of Europe, the list includes Canada, Hong Kong, Grenada. So even Lewis Hamilton cannot go to his home country. But then again, if you've got your own private jet, it might be a little bit different. But anyway, Jamaica, Jordan, Kuwait, Pakistan, Peru, Saudi Arabia, and also Tunisia and Sudan. So there is quite an extensive list. However, you know, Jamaica has always got a little something for us. You know, Tony, there's something special about the way how Jamaicans view the world and how things are going on in the world. And you found an absolutely gem. Tony, introduce this piece for us, please, man.
You know, Jamaicans right now are the #1 nation in the world for common sense. Why are they the #1 nation? Watch this video very quickly.
One local politician has courted controversy after making comments which could undermine public confidence in a COVID-19 vaccine. Mayor of Maypen, Winston Mirage, said it is safer that Jamaicans will get to see what happens to other people in other countries after they take the vaccine. He made the comment while addressing a function in Chapperton, Clarendon recently.
We understand that there is a vaccine out, more than one vaccines around. But, you know, sometimes when something new come out, you can't just run into it because you don't know what effects it might have on you. So we want the big countries, them like America and Canada and England. Go ahead and take the vaccine and let us see how it works for a little while before we rush into it. That's true. Yes, that's the safest thing to do. Yeah, so after that now, I would say, yes, it's working. Everything good for those people. Then we can, next year, we can say, all right, come our time now. We're ready to take it, eh?
It's now time for a break here on the midday.
Oh, man. You just got to love our people, man.
Oh.
When it comes to people, and it's just this one, make them go and go take it. And when they go take it, we can't watch and see what I go.
Oh, God.
The mayor of Maypen went in, boy. Clarendonians, man. Oh, Father have mercy.
I've been so many times, and every time I see it, it just cracks me up. And then he wants confirmation. He got, not sure.
And the thing is, he could, you know what? And this is weird. Even though Jamaicans and Caribbean people, we're bright and sometimes we can be hard to order. He didn't push it too far because you know what? His name is Winston Mirage. You know what I mean? And his middle name is Kiss. So he could have said to other English people, "My name is Kiss." We're not gonna take it.
But you know, he's absolutely right. You know,
he's absolutely right, mate. Absolutely
right. I mean, why don't more countries actually talk like this? You know,
and we need that. We need this honest narrative, because it's like the whole world has lost their common sense for real, man. Oh dear, that's sweet me. Yeah, man. Janet says, finally someone with common sense. Problem is common sense is not so common again. Definitely, definitely. Antigua Allison says, talk the things for real. Let us see how it works. It's not true? Why? Come on.
We say come by next year. By next year, we say come. Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah.
Oh, dear. Definitely. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hand over to Tony now, who's been taking us on a magical journey of Black love and understanding and history. Buckle up if you need to go for a little, a little wee up, just hold on to it, and because now is the time for you to open up this, open up this and have an understanding about for yourself, for your people, for your past, for your history, and right about now what's coming in with the future. Ladies and gentlemen, our historian of Black excellence, Mr. Tony Crossbody.
So we've been on a journey of the past, and today we're going to sort of bring things right up to present to really see where we are at this moment in time. So can we have the first slide, please? So today I want to start off talking about empires, right? Empires. As long as the human race has been on this planet, we have had empires. What is an empire? Well, basically, an empire is a vast space of territory that is ruled over, principally used to be by an emperor, hence the word empire, but then it became kings, sometimes it was generals. But often empires, their strategy was basically expansionist. So the more territory they covered and the more people they ruled, the more powerful they were and the more richer they became. Of course, empires are expensive to run. So what happened is when certain empires couldn't pay the bills of their colonies, that's when they started to deplete and become less powerful than they were at their height. Now, there have always been empires throughout the ages, and there seems to have been a code of conduct amongst empires, particularly when they conquered people. Next slide. Empires grew strong through conquering of nations. And often what happened when they conquered a nation, the first set of people that they would take away would be the nobles. That would be the kings and the queens and the aristocracy. And then it would be sort of the wise men, the philosophers, the craftsmen. These were the individuals that they were interested in. Why? Because these individuals could be a useful resource to the conquering empire. Every empire did this. Persia did this. Egypt did this. Rome did it. Next slide. Now, one of the things that empires used to do once they caught their captives, once they would either drag them back to their land or put them in a colony that they ran. One of the first things they used to do was change their names. So changing
is this changing the names of the land or of the people?
Of the people that they captured.
Of the people, okay.
Yeah. So they changed their names. They would also change their language and force them to speak their language, the language of the empire. With some of the nobles that they captured, they would put them through a schooling system where they would teach them the customs and the ways of the empire, and then use these people who had now been trained to talk to their people, the lower levels, right, to encourage them to do the same. So the empire always looked to control the captives, and they did that through removing language, culture, customs. Oftentimes they would separate the groups of captives and put them with other groups so they couldn't communicate amongst each other. Next slide. So it was very important for empires to make sure that only certain types of information got out to the captives. Why? Well, they wouldn't want the captives getting together, unifying and rebelling, perhaps revolting, perhaps putting the empire in danger. So information was very important in disseminating the information that the empire wanted for its subjects. Remember that the captives were there to be controlled. They were there to be assimilated into this new language, into this new custom, into this new way. Next slide. That technique, which has been used throughout the ages, is no different today with the empire that we find ourselves under. Information is the key to control. Information, if properly controlled, can make captives subservient, can make captives integrate, can make captives assimilate. And this is what happens today. Now, the empire can't go around to everybody's house and beat them over the head with a whip or a stick to control them. But they can create a device which you can have in your home, by which means they transmit the information they want you to absorb. Because they know how the mind works. They know that information sits in your subconscious mind, much like when you're planting seeds. And in another season, it will grow and become part of your conscious mind, and then your belief system, and then your actions. They've known this because they've studied psychology, and they've studied what ancient nations did to basically control their populace. And now they've just basically perfected this information control for their subjects. Next slide. This is why, you see, ever since you were a little boy or a little girl, you've been in front of a TV. The TV is the means of information, controlled information, so that you would develop a belief system that was in harmony with the aims and the goals of the empire. Next slide.
So true, man. So true.
You recall how when we were younger, we used to sit down as a family. Our parents didn't know better. It was just family time. You know, there was a time before TV when people just had the radio. They were gathered around the radio, and that used to be their medium of exchange, you see, of information exchange. In fact, if you look at the word media, right, the word media comes from the word medium, as in spirit medium. So if any of you have ever heard of going to fortune tellers, or if any of you have been there, you would encounter a spirit medium, and you would say to a spirit medium, well, what is my future? Oh, I want to talk to my mother or my father who passed away. And that spirit medium would come back to you with a message from the spirit world. That person is a media. It's the middle person. It's the middle ground. It's the foundation of which the news is going to come to you, but it comes from a further source. So that's what the media is, and that's what the media's job to do, is to control the flow of information and what you get. Next slide.
Angela Crozier saying, and that's now Alexia as well.
Right. So we grew up in an age. Where TV was provided to us as entertainment.
The Fosters, man.
We had no idea that many of the programs we watched had some form of underlying message, because we weren't aware of subliminal messaging. The TV was created to dispense information to the viewer, but also to provide entertainment to keep you locked in to that box, by which means you could be fed with information. Next slide.
Minder.
So as you see these slides, you see you're probably going to be triggered.
Oh man. Oh boy. For daily, man.
You're going to be triggered because you saw these shows when you were younger and they were very entertaining. And they kept you coming back to this source of information day after day, week after week. Next slide.
These are good times for
Who never sat down with their mum to watch this show?
But you know what? This was the beginning of the. This was the beginning of the Funkeries. This particular one here. This was the turning point. Dallas.
So these stories often had scandalous narratives.
Yeah.
Right? Affairs, adultery, all kind of thing, cheating, lying, right? And yet we were so addicted. We were so addicted to the baddie in that movie. Who remembers J.R. Ewing, right?
Come on.
We got to love the bad man, right? And
because
these were indeed. Go on.
No, because Cliff Barnes. Nobody wanted to a kid next to. You wanted to be J.R. Ewing. You wanted to be that person who was looking to take on the family legacy and take it to the next generation at whatever it cost. He was absolutely ruthless, cold-hearted, and we loved him, mate. We loved what his twists and his plots and.
Right. So many of us grew up with this, didn't we? Next slide.
It did have balance, though. It did have balance. No problem.
Yeah. No problem. Can you imagine? Some of us now are in our late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
Higher than 60s? Anybody higher than 60s?
Yeah.
70s, 80s, come on.
Some of us have never had a year off watching TV. Can you imagine the hundreds of thousands of hours over a 40-year period, 50-year period that we have had? And very few of these shows, right, showed Black people either in a positive light or Africa in a positive light, but glorified, obviously, the empire, right? Remember, the media is run by the empire. They dictate the shows on their platform. It's their platform. And some people say, oh, well, why don't they tell us who we are? Why don't they teach us about ourselves? And here's the thing. They're not supposed to. It's an empire. You're a captive. If you understand the rules of empire, you know that they have no obligation to teach you anything. If you're going to learn anything about yourself, it's got to come from within your community. Nobody's going to come from the outside to teach you because they're not supposed to. The rules of empire are that you keep the captives controlled, you keep the captives assimilated. And that comes through controlling the flow of information.
Makes perfect sense, Tony.
Next slide.
It's almost like when you watch two football teams play each other. You don't expect the other team to tell you all their tactics and everything.
No.
To tell you all their strengths.
Their intention.
You got to work that out for yourself.
You've got to work it out for yourself, right?
Makes sense.
We spoke about, so that's one source of information, right? Which is the TV. And we can now say that includes also all social media, right? As a source of information. The second source of information that you've received since you were in kindergarten is the education system. What did you learn at school? You learned that you learned the basics, right? Reading, writing, arithmetic. Some of you were privileged were clever enough to go to higher education, get a reasonably good job. Well, but what did you learn about yourself? What history did you learn?
To be honest with you, Tony, a lot of our children already had the ability to read and write before they went to school.
That's true.
Our parents have already done a very good job before, like Emmanuel said with him and his wife, that they're going to actually self-teach at home. So a lot of our children went into the school system already above the national standard, to be honest. So yeah.
Right. So you could do that, but again, the history was completely missing, right?
Oh yeah.
As a consequence of history missing, we have an epidemic in black boys being expelled from school. And I say this, that it's down to the history, because I myself mentor in schools, and I've proved that when you teach black boys history, it can turn them around.
Mm.
But like I said, it is not the empire's job to teach the captives about themselves.
Just picking up on some of the comments, Carolyn Samuda Simmons says, this has been my year off TV. Donna Ben says, they don't want us to know about ourselves. And Jen says, yes, truth right there. Very much so. And George Williams says, our Rasta elders have been ramming down our throat, know thyself, and we've ignored them to our own incipience.
Right. So here we are, right, as captives of an empire, and we don't understand why we don't know ourselves. You're not supposed to. The TV is not there to educate you. Social media is not there to educate you. Next slide. Sometimes you can only understand your position in a society or within an empire when you see the news or when you read newspapers as to your real position. When you're having a good time and everything's going well, you're going on your holidays, you're having your weekenders, you're having a rave, right? You're going for a drink. Those things are the furthest things from your mind. You might even be fooled to believe that, yeah, well, you know, I'm doing well in the empire. I'm accepted in the empire. Until you get reminders of your real position within the empire. Right? Next slide. Even your own government, who seem very benign and very kind and very helpful, are actually nothing of the sort. Because while they may answer your protests or your clamoring for justice with making token appointments, the reality is they don't even accept the fundamental point of your argument. As you can see with this particular recent appointment of Boris Johnson's, who claims that institutionalized racism was a myth. So do you think that Boris doesn't know? That's her belief system?
100%, that's why he pointed her.
So what this is, you see, when you have a situation like this, where something is happening to you, but it's made to look like it's not really happening to you, it's what's called in psychology gaslighting. Okay, if you haven't heard that term before, gaslighting, it's not when you go and cook some food. It's a psychological term. Let's put up next slide. Mr. C, just read that. If you can just read this for us. This next slide that's coming up.
So it reads, gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse that's seen in abusive relationships. It's the act of manipulating a person by forcing them to question their thoughts, their memories, and the events occurring around them. A victim of gaslighting can be pushed so far that they question their own sanity. So I know a lot of people feel that this way in relationships, but again, we're in a relationship, as you're saying, Tony, with the empire of which we have been serving for quite a while. So yeah, and we're definitely we you know, I'm sure that everyone of black origin has had some form of thoughts as regards to the comments here in this particular paragraph. I know I have.
Right. So you're going through an experience, and then somebody's coming to you and saying, What racism? Nah, you're being racist. You're being divisive by bringing this subject up. See, that becomes gaslighting. What gaslighting does then, it sort of unofficially puts a gagging order on you as a black person, which means basically you have to be careful which platforms you speak about these matters on, right? For fear of offending the empire. That is gaslighting. So the empire knows, they know this, they know what they're doing, and they know what you're going through. Next slide, please.
Against the burning injustice that if you're born poor, you will die on average 9 years earlier than others. If you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than if you're white.
So, can we just play that again? Can we play that one more time? Let's see if he's got that. Can we play it again? No, okay. So,
against the burning injustice that if you're born poor, you will die on average 9 years earlier than others. If you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than if you're white.
So they know how they're treating you. They know how they're treating you.
No, that was just her looking into the future to let us know that things will remain the same when she's in power.
Right.
Jankra.
We have a very high percentage of black people in prison in prisons, right?
George Williams says in a UK we make up just over 3% of the UK population, yet over 30% of prison population, according to the government website.
Right. Right. Next slide. So she's telling you, the government have told you this is what we're doing to you, and yet these are the people that are appointed to oversee or to oversee a commission that we have been asking for justice and equality. This is what the empire is offering you. Next slide. Right? So they know, and you're just being gaslighted, black people. That's what this is. In fact, listen to this next clip and notice the gaslighting in this interview. Next slide, please.
Extent of the reparations debate here in Jamaica, and how will your government formulate its own response to this emerging strong issue here in the Caribbean?
No, I haven't been taken aback. Of course, this is an important debate. I mean, my view is that as we look into the past, we should think of all of the aspects of the past, not least the action that Britain took for many decades to wipe slavery off the high seas and off the face of our planet. And so I don't think reparations are the right answer. But the purpose of my visit...
Did you see the gaslighting in that? He didn't want to talk about the past, and if we did, we have to talk about what the British did to eradicate slavery from the high seas. But now we've got to move on, in other words. Next slide.
You need a slap in his high forehead.
So wherever you turn, black people, you're being gaslighted, right? You're being handed out little tokens to show that things are being done on your behalf. But the fact is, those are only short-term crumbs. The major things like reparations, it's not even on the agenda as far as they're concerned. Right? It's not even up for discussion. Forget an apology, and most certainly forget a payment. And this is where we find ourselves. Now, it's interesting, for those of you who've been watching this show for the last few weeks, I have gone into great detail about who we are, right? Those who are descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. I've gone into great detail about that. I'm not going to cover that again tonight. If you want to know if this is your first time to the show, please go back and look at some of the, at least going back at least 4 weeks, where I've sort of gone into great.
Beginning of October.
Yes, yes, since the beginning of October, we've been covering this since Black History Month. But this oppression, okay, is not something unknown. Let's look at the next slide. Mr. C, if you read this, the content of this slide for us, please.
Again, I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors. They have no comforter. And this is Ecclesiastes 4.
Right. So this verse here talks about how the oppressed are continually oppressed, and there's no end seemingly in sight, because the empire is more powerful than the captives, right? Next slide. And it's very obvious that those who rule over you, their opinions about you are very clear. They don't have to like you. They don't have to embrace you. They are the empire. You are an already assimilated population, right? Some of us say deep down in our heart that we are British. But try doing that when you go to an Asian man shop to go and buy your yam and banana, and he asks you, where are you from? Tell him you're British, right?
Come on, mate, you're not British, mate. Look, I can look, come on, where are you from, man? Jamaican, Grenadian, come on, Central Lucian, come on, mate. No, you're not British, mate. Look, I'm not British, you're not British. You're not British, I'm not British. Come on, mate.
even you know, even they know.
Of course.
When it comes to dealing with, you know, we've seen the Rindra scandal, for example. There's no compunction about sending you back, even if you've never been there. Right? This is the empire. You are captives in it. So we've looked at television, right? We've looked at the general attitude of the empire. The last bastion of help that we could look to for information and support could be this one. Next slide. Could be the church. But is it? Church is just another form of education, pretty much working hand in hand with the state. Why do we say that? Because even though many of us grew up in the church, some of us still go to church, the message that we're taught in the churches has nothing to do with the experiences of Black people generally, right? It's pretty much come one, come all. Let's hold hands together and we'll all get to heaven at some point. But are they teaching Black people about slavery and their part and the church's part in it? How they financed it? How they made money from it?
Oh, come, Tony. That was a long time ago. And, you know, if we all, as you said, hold hands together and sing Kumbaya, my Lord, we can all move forward together.
Right, right. Let's hold hands, turn the other cheek, forgive us for what we did to you while we got our boots on your neck still. And the church works hand in hand with the empire. Now, people don't really know that. Go on, carry on, go on.
No, but it's funny you should say that, Tony, because when you think about the whole Black Lives Matter and the whole George Floyd thing, for example, I've got no recollection of any major church organization coming forward and saying anything at all. Any. Yes. I can't think of any that has made a public statement or a pledge or any at all. And a lot of them have got so much support from Black families and Black people. So I find it, as you said, it definitely shows that they're hand in hand with governments.
Absolutely.
It should seem.
The priesthood and the empire always worked together. The priesthood's job was to sanctify the empire's armies while they went off to conquer other peoples. And then when they came back with the loot, they shared it with the priesthood. It was the Catholic Church that signed off slavery for the European nations and greatly benefited from it. So this being an institution that people have looked to for some type of solace and truth has absolutely failed where black people are concerned. Now, that's not to say, that is not to say that the churches don't have some good in them, right? They provide a place of comfort and building up of each other's faith. But their history is so bloody and so greedy and so deceptive that unfortunately you cannot put your trust in institutions like that, especially those that work for the empire. Next slide. And so we find ourselves in a situation where a lot of us are still in the church. That's where we're getting our spiritual education. We've been receiving our secular education from the TV and from schools, none of which are teaching us anything about our history or anything close to that. Then we go to the church, and then we're receiving another set of teaching, which the empire basically validates. Next slide. Next slide. One more, please. Next slide. So what happens is both the school system, or rather 3 systems, the television system, the media system, the school system, and the church system are involved in indoctrination, right? Remember, the purpose of indoctrinating you is getting you to think as one with the empire. That's what they tell you, right? They say, we are all one. And there you see the definition of indoctrination is the process of teaching a person or group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. Isn't that what the church does? Isn't that what the TV does when you watch the news? Isn't that what your teacher did at school when you just copied from a textbook? Do we realize how indoctrinated we are as a people? Granted, a lot of other people are indoctrinated too, but a lot of other people don't have the history that we have. So do we appreciate the level of indoctrination? In fact, a lot of people don't know that one of the reasons, well, let's look at the next slide. I'll show you something. Next slide. Now, a lot of
churches and tax, okay.
A lot of people don't realize that churches are tax-free, right? They don't pay no taxes. And the reason why they don't pay no taxes is because they're recognized as a charity, right? Who recognizes them as a charity? Well, it's Her Majesty's government, right? What do you think the requirements are to accept a church as a charity in order for it to go tax-free? What do you think that church would have to be teaching in order for the government, the empire, to allow it to go tax-free?
It's a good question. Very good question.
Can you understand now why your church could never tell you of your history?
So what's the requirements, Tony?
Well, the requirements are pretty much standard all over the world, right? And actually were established very much during the colonial era. And for example, during on the plantations, the slaves were allowed to have churches, right? But they had a warden there with a gun. And what would happen is that the pastor would have to preach according to what the warden thought was acceptable, otherwise he would be shot.
Wow. Wow. And I thought there was pressure doing stand-up comedy, boy. Wow, that's pressure.
They can't do that now, right? But what they can do, right, is remove your charity status if they find that you do not qualify for being a charity. And that could happen if they see you as subversive. If black preachers started to go on a platform and say, the story of the Bible is the story of black people today, their charity funding will be pulled like no tomorrow.
Wowza.
Most of their profits and revenue would be gone. This is why, despite the fact that you go to a black church, but despite the fact you go to a black church, they cannot and will not teach you about black history and how the Bible is very much connected with it. I had a friend of mine who goes to church, and after listening to this show, she called up a pastor and wanted to talk to her. And the pastor said, where are you getting this from? And subsequently put the phone down.
Wow.
Right?
Deep.
Because it's not a subject that they can talk about.
Deep.
It would mean having to pay tax. It would mean having to have your privileges rescinded as a church, which obviously would affect your money.
Oh yeah, I try to upset the poor pastor apple cart for Tony.
Next slide. And most pastors and priests go to what's called seminary, or what we call Bible school, right? And in these Bible schools, they have set curriculums, just like school. And this was something that was started by the Catholic Church. And most religious denominations have their own
theology.
Schools. Right, their own theology. But none of this theology can involve black people and the Bible. That's why if you ever talk to any Christian person and say, well, what about slavery? They will tell you, oh, well, God is going to sort that out when we go to heaven or soon. We don't have to worry about that. Because they don't know. Because they're not taught. Because it cannot be taught. Because there's a price to pay for teaching that. So we've seen that the form of information coming from the media, the television and social media, and from the church is all from the state. It's part of the empire. And even the leaders that we are given, that are put out in front of us, right? And there's been some great leaders, but the result of where we are as a people hasn't really changed. Right?
Donna Ben says, sorry to upset some people, but the church is required to teach you foolishness. Anything to keep you blind to your own self. Interesting point of view. Interesting point of view.
Yeah. So this is all about, this discussion here is about information. Who controls it? Who absorbs it? And the people who absorb it, what do they do with it? So you can only work with what you know. You cannot work with what you don't know. And that has been pretty much most of our lives. We've been working with what we don't know. Not understanding why we don't know. We've had these leaders, these shepherds, right, who've come along, and we've put our faith in them, our trust in them, and we follow them, and we think something's going to happen. And then what happens? They die, get sick, the movement ends, we go back to normal, go back to the abuse. Next slide. We even are so indoctrinated that for some of us, a picture like this is very difficult to look at. Right?
Oh yeah, you've sent that picture to a couple senior Caribbeans or Africans, and they'll be upset with you, bro.
Yeah. That is the level of, that is the depth of indoctrination. That is when you know, if a picture like this triggers us, that tells you that the empire has really done a number on your mind.
How dare
Because
you put a picture of sheep herder for Jesus? Where's our white Jesus? Where's our savior? Yes, this is a picture of sheep. This is a sheep herder. I don't want this. I want white Jesus. Give me white Jesus, savior.
So that's so we have that complex, right?
Sure.
This is part of the indoctrination. This is part of what's been drummed into us. We forget that Christ grew up in Africa for at least 10 years of his life when they had to escape after being chased out by Herod. But the fact that he's black causes a lot of problem for many. Next slide. So, Mr. C, please, if you could just read the yellow highlighted part, because this is a discussion about how the leaders, whether they're religious, civil rights leaders, political activists, have pretty much failed the people. Just read that yellow highlight for us, please, if you can.
As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, because my flock lacks a shepherd, and so has been plundered and has become food for all the wild animals, and because my shepherds did not search for my flock, but cared for themselves rather than my flock.
Stop there, thank you. So the Most High has pointed out that his sheep, his flock, his people have been neglected by the shepherds. Right? Shepherds are there to teach. Shepherds is another word for pastor. Right? Or leader. They have neglected to feed the flock. Instead, the Most High says they've been feeding themselves. And then that leaves you as a people exposed to all the wild animals, right? The oppression, the deception, the lies that you've had to live through, with seemingly nobody to help you. Next slide. Can you read the yellow section, please?
I will bring them out from the nations and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land. I will pasture them on the mountains of Israel.
Thank you. So speaking about his people, the Most High says that he will take his people. He will shepherd them. I know it says he will gather them from the countries. What countries? Well, the countries that they're spread out to throughout the world, throughout the Western Hemisphere. In Europe. We saw a few weeks ago how we have people in India who were taken there in slavery. Most High says he's not going to allow other shepherds to look after his flock. They have not been doing it. Next slide. And just one more time, the green section again, please, Mr. C.
As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock, when he is with them, so will I look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness.
Thank you. So that's what you are. You're scattered. You're scattered sheep. You're scattered throughout the various parts of the world. Your shepherds have failed you. That's why you know nothing about yourself. That's why you know nothing about where you come from. That's why you don't even know what the future holds for you. And the Most High points out that you are scattered throughout the earth and he will come to collect you. He is your shepherd. Next slide. Remember, the empire controls the media, right? And the empire controls your mind if you allow it. Perhaps we can think about taking some media breaks, social media breaks, TV breaks, right? Just to cleanse ourselves spiritually, because we've had so much indoctrination inserted into us. That is it any wonder that we're lost? Isn't it any wonder that we're trying to make plans about how we're going to break these chains and yet constantly being unsuccessful, as all these leaders are rolled out for us and we rally around them like they're going to save us? No, you're a scattered sheep. Your shepherds have let you down. The empire wants you. It wants your children, your grandchildren. This is why it's so important for you to understand history, understand your history. Because when you understand your history, you have something to give to your children. You have something to give to them that is more valuable than money. It's more valuable than your pension. It's more valuable than your house. It's an inheritance. You are giving your children an inheritance by giving them an understanding. But in order to do that, you must control the amount of media you are taking into your mind. The more media you are taking into mind, the more time you spend on WhatsApp, the more time you spend on Facebook, YouTube. You are having your mind taken away from what really matters at this time, which is the understanding of yourself, your history.
Patrick Solomon says, now you're talking, my brother. No mobile phone for a week.
Yeah, that can work. That can work.
I've seen quite a few people do social media detox, where for a whole week they're not on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter.
Right.
Again, not even on WhatsApp. And they've said it's been very, very helpful. It's helped them to focus more on the task what they needed to have achieved, and they've got a lot more done, and they felt a lot better within themselves. So possibly it's something we should do. I mean, I know a lot of people are intermittent fasting. Why not? Should we not be doing intermittent fasting from social media? Very good point of view, Tony.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Patrick Solomon, for your suggestion as well.
Next slide. So to round up our discussion, information is what is determining your life, right? Information is determining your life. The information you are taking into your mind is going to determine your belief system, is going to determine how you live that belief system. The empire controls the media. The empire controls the school system. The empire controls the church. You've been living decades of your life in this way. And you have to understand that all of us are indoctrinated and we actually need to detox. Right?
It's a very good point that you make, Tony. So the big question is, are people able to unplug themselves from this indoctrination? Do people have the capacity? Do they have the tools to do it? Because, you know, when you talk about the human belief system, it's something that which I'm not saying I'm an expert on, but I've spoken to lots of people throughout my journey in life. And one of the blocks that I see is that once somebody's got a belief system which says, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, this is what I stand for. Once you start to challenge that, straight away the barriers come up.
Yes.
And you could give them fact after fact after fact, but they will, the barriers prevent them absorbing any of that new information, number one. Number two, if you get close enough to them or long enough with them to establish the new truths, what happens is that their old belief system breaks, and then they become this wildebeest of, they have no beliefs. They don't know what is true, what is right. And it takes a special person to be able to move forward in that moment. So I found that, you know, if somebody hasn't got the right tools or the right knowledge or the right grounding in order to move from one place to the other, they become lost. And this is where we see some people where that 1 minute they're Buddhist, next minute they're this, next minute they're that, next minute they're this. They might try everything under the sun. They have no real direction or real understanding of who they are or what they're about. So, you know, how does somebody actually prepare themselves for this transition and this movement forward?
Good. And that ties with what Hadriana says. She says many people find change difficult, and that's a very true point. So what we've actually been attempting to do on this show since Black History Month is actually to chart a journey, right, of how Black people got to be in this space where we are today. Now, there's been many theories out there, there's many historians out there that have a narrative. But we have discussed a narrative that charts an unbroken journey using historical sources to show how we got to this point. So the first thing I would encourage anyone to do, if they haven't seen those videos, is go back and have a look at a few of them, right? Look at them. And in a minute, I'm going to recommend a book that you can actually read, which is, you know, again, it's not heavy reading, but it's very informative. And what happens, Mr. C, with these situations is that you don't let go of one idea and then grab onto another. What you do is there's a transition period where you're learning one thing and slowly the old ideas start to pull back as you embrace the new idea, you see? And you've got to remember, most of the ideas that we have are nothing but indoctrination. Remember what the definition of indoctrination is, right? It's the acceptance of information that's pretty much not looked at critically. So most of the ideas about that we have about life and the way we live and who we are is mostly indoctrination.
So
the true historical narrative about who we are, how we got here, why slavery took place, how long it was due to take place for, what would happen at the end of it, right? We have covered on this show. So we're going to try to encourage our listeners to listen to it, then pick up some reading material in conjunction with what we're talking about, and then start doing some research for themselves.
And in addition to that, I think what it, you know, it's very much that sometimes in life we have to let go the old and build our own standing blocks. It was one of the things which was kind of made clear to me at a very early age, is that once truth has been presented to you, let go of the untruth and create your own standing blocks. Therefore, it may be like, you know what, I don't eat pork. I think it's an unclean meat. I don't eat. Some people will say, oh no, pork is good. And then you do the thing where you put white rum on pork and you see the worms come out and everything. And that person will say, no, well, we're not business about the worms. It's still, it's all right to me. But you've seen it. You've seen the evidence for yourself.
We were talking to Emmanuel just there a moment ago. And my question to him was, Emmanuel, do you see a point where Black people can build their own platform, like a studio or whatever, and make their own movies and tell their own story, right? If you were to use that as an analogy of what I'm trying to say, is that we as Black people have to build our own platform of history.
That's right.
Right? Not invent something, come with the proof, come with the sources, right? Do the work, read, understand who we are, and work in harmony with that information, rather than the indoctrinated information that we have, that we are Africans, that we were sitting on a beach somewhere 500 years ago and men took us away and we don't know why, and we're waiting for them to tell us our story, when we're living within the midst of an empire whose job is not to tell you anything. They're not under any obligation to tell you a story. You have to tell yourselves a story. See? But if you don't, if you rely upon the indoctrination you're getting through the schools, through the churches, through the media, we will forever remain lost.
And forever waiting for something to happen when it's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
And it's I had a conversation with a Rasta man once, and two things he said. I remember I was doing a flyer for a show in Broadway Theatre Catford, and I went into this shop and I handed out a flyer in this Rastaman shop, and he said, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, it's for a show and blah blah blah." He said, "Ah, well, all right. If you're gonna hand out the flyers, then give me 2 tickets." I said, "Well, probably if you said please, I'd give you the tickets. But because you didn't say please, you're not getting the tickets." He said, "Rastaman don't beg." I said, "No, it's not about begging. Yeah, it's about you having some manners." And he says, "For the fact that I say please to you, I'm giving you permission. I'm begging you permission," he said. And I argued with him, Tony, for around about 6 to 7 minutes. But you know, one thing with me, once certain things make sense in my head, I can't argue with it anymore. And the other thing, what he explained to me is that the reason why a lot of the times black people will never get anything is because, as you've rightly said, is that we're always begging. We're always begging. We're always begging, saying, "You know what? You treated us unfair. Why can't you allow us to have our own TV program? Why can't we have more people?" We're always begging, bro. Always begging. And from once you're begging, you're never in a position to change anything, because, as you rightly said, we're begging empires to go against their code of conduct. We have to have our own code of conduct, which is that, number one, we don't beg anybody for anything. We create and take and make what is rightfully ours, And until we have that mindset, things will never change for us.
The empire has no interest in your welfare. It's interested in its own welfare. Do you see? How to become greater, how to become more powerful, how to get their subjects on board, how to keep them quiet and settled. They're not interested in providing you with historical narratives about yourself that you can come to know yourself. That's the whole point. That's why we've been in this position for so long. See?
And you know what? Listen, sorry, Tony, just to cut you. George, we really thank you for your comments this evening. And you've hit on something which was really interesting, the Black Jacobins. Which, again, I think even Steve McQueen, he's been subtly trying to place that book in 1 or 2 of his Small Act series. He's placed that in there as a little hidden gem for people. And again, because George has said it, I think that is definitely one that we all need to be looking at.
Right. So if anyone who doesn't know, The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James is about the Haitian Revolution. And you know they'll never make a movie like that, right? That movie will never be made because there's a point that you have to be kept at. Next slide, please. While we're talking, people can look at this book. No, next one. Sorry, we looked at that already. Next slide. One more. There you go. So people can look at that book. I think it's a very interesting narrative about our story. Very not too long a read, but it's packed with information. It's called The Negro Question, Part 2, by a brother called Lee Cummins. So I mean, those of you who are interested in reading more about this information, I encourage you to get that book. But yes, Mr. C, you're right. And just like those girls, for example, who did the Halo project, they took matters into their own hands, right? And said, look, we can't wait to get this permission. We need to do this, right? And I know that a lot of us, perhaps, we think that since we left school, we're kind of done with education. We only read for work, or we read when we're reading our messages. But this reading that we need to do now is really, you won't appreciate how important this is until the future starts to come your way. We're moving into 2021. The world is changing before our eyes. The 400 years are up. And there are many things coming your way that if you're not informed about them, you will be caught off guard. And your history plays a big part in all of this. So information, but it's got to be yours. Don't even say because I said it. Oh, he said it. Yeah, I believe. No, don't believe me. Get it. Make it yours. Maybe cut down an hour of TV a day and read a book about your history.
Yeah.
Right? Have a social media fasting day. Right? But never forget, the media is controlled, the information is controlled, and the more you absorb that, your mind will be controlled and you'll be further down the road of darkness.
Stand on your own understanding is the best thing to do. And don't be afraid. You know, somebody mentioned in the comments about change. People are afraid of change. And this is one of the things, is that we've been taught subconsciously that change is not good, that we don't want to change. We like things as they are. I like it as it is. You know what I mean? Like in the 60s, I liked it. In the 50s, I liked it, but it was just us here. And then you people came over, then them people came over, then every people came over. Don't like change. But what we've got to understand is that a lot of us, we speak things to ourselves which are nonsense, such as, you see me, I will never change. You see me? It's how you see me today, it's how I'll be tomorrow. It's bull, it's absolute bull. Because you are not the same person you were when you was in your 20s. You are not the same person you were when you were in your teens. And you won't be the same person that you will become in your 70s or your 80s. So change is something which is inevitable. So what it is, you've got to look at it, that change is something that you add on to yourself. That the stuff what Tony is talking about and has been showing us over the weeks is something which doesn't change you, but something that you add on to yourself. What makes you better than how you were before. It makes your understanding even more knowledgeable than how you were before. And these are the things which we have to embrace within the aspect of change.
Yes, Mr. C. And as I pointed out before, it's not just for you, right? It's for your children. Some of you have got big children now. Your kids are sort of like in their 20s and 30s, right? Some of them are intuitive enough. They've done some research, but they might not have the narrative. They may not understand who they really are. See, when you understand the narrative, you understand why these things are going on. You see what I mean? It's not, you know, and what it does, what understanding the narrative does, it helps us to come out of that victim mindset. That's what learning about history really does. And you're not looking to the empire to do things for you. You know why the empire is doing these things, because you understand the history. I was talking to a friend the other day on WhatsApp, and she said to me, you know, talking about, you know, black people being called up to have the COVID vaccine. She goes, I don't understand why all this is happening. And I said, because you don't have an appreciation of history. That's why you don't know. It makes perfect sense when you have the historical narrative that brings you all the way here. You understand who you are. You understand why you're being oppressed. You understand who the empire is and their interests in keeping you in this place by use of the way they disseminate information to you and your willingness to absorb whatever information they give you, rather than choosing your own information.
Thank you very much as well, Adriana Evans. She says the star has returned last night. For those of you who weren't aware of the moon, Saturn, and the other planets escaped me, but they was in line. Jemmy, just Jemmy Reese says the only two constants in the universe is God and change. Carolyn says change is, but not everyone embraces the reality of evolving. And Blossom Nation says, dear producers, is it possible for Mr. Crossbody and Mr. C to devote the whole show to Black history, please? This is extremely insightful. Well done once again. Thank you, Blossom. I can't even take credit for this, Blossom. This is the hard work and diligence of Tony. But we hear you, and I think we definitely will be doing specials where we won't be talking gloom and doom, ladies and gentlemen. So next week's show will be a special one. Where we will be having a what a year. The first half an hour of the show will be dedicated to what a year. Then we move into a half an hour, ladies and gentlemen, where we've had quite a few people who have been jumping in the comments over the time that we've been doing the show. And we're going to welcome around about 4 of you to come live with myself and Tony next week and join in our discussion for the second half of that hour. And then we will allow Tony to do what he does for the final hour, ladies and gentlemen. So it's going to be a special one next week. It's not what a week, it's what a year.
What a year.
So please watch out, because some of you are going to be coming live with myself and Tony next week. Tony, I'll leave you to round things up for us today.
Well, like I said, I mean, I think I'll leave you with the thought about this book here. I'd recommend, I think those of you who are inclined, I would encourage you to pick up your Bible again and dismiss any notions that the Bible is a religious book. It is a book of history. It is a source of history that we can use, and it's a source of history that tells our story. So I can only leave you with that.
And my final thoughts for today, as regards to the journey that Tony has taken us on, is that collectively as a people, we still have some work to do. However, individually and within our own family units, we can create now new building blocks of understanding of self, and we can create our own commandments. And the more of us who create commandments which are in harmony with the 10 commandments, which was the only thing written by the hand of God, whether you're a believer or not, the only way we can move forward as people is if we start writing our own commandments of how we are going to move forward as people, without begging, without having to ask for permission, embracing who we are, most importantly, collecting the knowledge of who we are and who we are up against, and moving things forward. This has been a fantastic What a Week. We thank each and every single one of you who have joined in the comments and the conversation. Again, big up to One Love Lottery. Please look out for them. They're doing absolutely amazing things within the community. We shall give them a special plug next week as well. But ladies and gentlemen, can we please collectively give Tony Crossbody an amazing round of applause for the sleepless nights, the hard work that he has done for the last 2 months, 2 to 3 months, I should near enough say, of sharing us a journey of who we are and where we've come from, and most importantly, where we're going. I've been Mr. C.
And I'm Tony Crossbody. Until next week, it's been What a Week.
Take care. God bless.